What's the weirdest, most disturbing thing you've seen in a customer's house? I was a carrier for the post office. When you first start, you only have one route, 1 day a week. Every other day, you cover for someone who calls in sick or is on vacation or something like that. So one day, I covered for a different carrier who was sick. I got to one house and they have like 4 packages. On the front door, there was a sign that said, "Please don't knock or ring, just open door and leave the packages behind the door." So I'm like, okay, this is weird, but whatever. It must happen a lot because the sign was old and dusty. So I opened the door, went in, and the house is normal. I bend down to put the packages down neatly. As I rise back up, there's this old dude who had to be like 60 or 70, just standing there in really tight jeans, a really tight tank top, with a clearly dyed jet black mustache, drinking beer out of a can with a straw. I naturally got scared for a second, so I told him, "Sorry, you scared me. I didn't see you there." And he just says, "That's because I wasn't here." So I just say, "Well, I'm sorry," and start to leave, and he says, "Hold up, where is the name of the person I was replacing?" And I said, "Oh, she's sick, so I'll be covering for her today, and possibly tomorrow." And his words verbatim were, "Nice, maybe she should stay sick a while. I'll make sure to wear something cute tomorrow." I fake laugh and get the hell out of there. Disturbing? Not at all. Weird? A bit. I was a medical equipment delivery guy for a couple of years. Went into a dementia patient's house and had to instruct his caretaker on how to set up a large e-tank of O2. As I was kneeling down, my phone went off with my really low-key notification tone, which was a singular beep. Well, the pet bird nearby seemed to have taken a shine to that noise and mimicked it perfectly in tone and volume. The caretaker and I looked at one another, with her saying, "I've been here for 6 years and he's never done that before." From then on, every time I delivered and knelt down to re-educate the caretaker, which SOP demands that I do, that bird would instinctively ping me until I let my phone notification sound go off, after which the bird would celebrate by bobbing its head up and down and turning in a circle. I was a firefighter another time in my life. Had a middle-of-the-night call to a mobile home for an elderly lady once. We walked in and it's dark, but as my eyes start to adjust, I think, "Oh, that's weird wallpaper." I keep looking around. It's on the ceiling too. Weird inconsistent patterns and rectangle shapes. My eyes adjust some more while we're talking to her. What the frick? Are those puzzles? She had hundreds of puzzles that she had glued when completed and then glued them to every surface of her mobile home. Walls, ceiling, living room, bedroom. Every square inch covered. Weird. But you do you, especially in your own home. What a puzzling situation, but I'm glad you were able to piece together a respectful attitude to her decoration style. That's it. I could think of 2 puzzle-related puns, and the second one was a real stretch. But that's after leading my brain on a 2-hour jig. Saw what I did there? Ugh, I hate myself. I'm an electrician, and I was troubleshooting a bad outlet in the bathroom of a former NFL player. I was taking all the outlets apart, following them to see if I could trace out the home runs, when he comes in and starts talking football. We're in the middle of talking when he just walks over to the toilet and starts going number 2. I couldn't see him, but there was this little pony wall between us. He didn't even stop telling his story. It was crazy. I walked out because of the smell. He came out a little later and it was like nothing had ever happened. That's probably normal for the guy. I doubt training camps and whatnot are known for having stellar bathrooms. I remember a story about a player being gifted a game ball by the coach because he managed to take a crap while on the bench in the middle of the game without someone noticing. I used to deliver oxygen to people's homes. I saw plenty of weird things, lots of hoarders, but this one took the cake. He didn't want to let us into his house, but I had to do a home safety assessment before I could set up the equipment. He was anxious about letting me in because his house was a mess. He kept telling me about his messy house. I came to find out it wasn't just messy. It was filled with 200 chickens. He was proud of his show chickens and wouldn't let them live in a barn or coop. That's probably why he needed oxygen. The smell was unbearable. Other than that, he was a super nice guy. I was a paramedic in Oakland, and once I was in a home where a child had been bitten by a rat in her crib. As we were standing there talking to the mother about her options, a rat walked up to one of the firefighters and bit his boot. The firefighter stomped the rat to death, and the rat was taken to the health department for testing. That was a strange situation. Long ago, I did estimates for fire and water damage repairs for a restoration company. The couple had a small fire in their bedroom. When I entered the home, it was seemingly normal, smelled a bit like smoke, which made sense because there was a fire. They took me to the bedroom, and it was the mattress that had endured the majority of the fire, along with some of the wall above the head of the bed and smoke damage to the ceiling. Next to each side of the bed were 10-gallon buckets filled to the brim with cigarette butts, and hundreds of spilled-over butts all over the floor. I was just in awe of how they could live like this in their bedroom, especially since the rest of their home seemed tidy and normal. Also completely beyond me why they wouldn't clean that crap up right after the fire, if for no other reason than insurance adjusters being able to blame them rightly and possibly not pay out. So, how did the fire start? I asked. I was required to ask. No idea, the husband replied. I once helped renovate an old building that was a house but converted to a business, and it was super run down when my employer bought it. We did a ton of work, including removing subflooring and ceilings. We found a hidden cellar in the back suite. It was once the kitchen or mudroom, I guess. The thing was filled with trash and random odds and ends. There were GI water ration cans dated 1956. In the middle, we kept finding spoons in the ceiling as we were taking it down. It was weird, but then we realized it was where a junkie kept ditching their spoons. Fire alarm inspector here, working in a cheap long-term hotel, and I knocked on a door where a large man, dressed in essentially a purple bikini, opened the door half asleep. I entered to test the smoke detector and tried to keep my eyes off the bed, but I knew I'd seen something. I tried not to look, but I did, and there was a big old purple eggplant-shaped adult toy next to the TV remote. The detector then decides to not alarm in a timely fashion, so I'm just staring at the wall hoping it will alarm, so I get out of the room. My boyfriend is a locksmith. During the 2008 recession, Las Vegas had hundreds of thousands of homes getting repoed or abandoned. The company he worked for would have him go and change the locks to keep people out, and usually this happened in the middle of the night to limit the possibilities of running into ex-owners of the properties. I sometimes tagged along, mostly to explore some of the ridiculously big houses that people had just left, but I also helped some of the time. This one house looks totally normal from the outside. You couldn't tell any difference from any of the other cookie-cutter planned development homes. But inside every room, there were these time-out dolls. If you've never seen them, they're a doll that stands against the wall with its hands up to its face, even more creepy usually since they have no face, but they look like a kid hiding their face or pouting after being put in timeout. When I say they were in every room, I mean every single room. And not just one, but dozens lining the walls. Not laying down, but standing up against every wall of the house. The house's electricity had been shut off, so all we had was flashlights. Walking into each room, it didn't get less creepy seeing doll after doll. He's already afraid of dolls, and this made it so much worse. Altogether, we counted 63, but there might have been more. I was installing alarm systems, and one day I went out on a service call. I stepped into a literal cesspool, and thank God for my plastic booties to protect my shoes from walking on their disgusting carpet. I was shown to the alarm panel, and when I pulled the panel off the wall to see why it wasn't powering on, an army of roaches started scurrying out of the wall. Turns out the panel died because several roaches had electrocuted themselves on the circuit board. I used to do flooring, and there was this one time we had to get up the subflooring due to water damage. Underneath it there was a black garbage bag. When I opened said bag, it had a bunch of women's clothes in it. Didn't think anything about it until we dumped them out and found bloody ripped undies and torn dresses. We told the owner we had forgotten some stuff at work and wouldn't be back until tomorrow. We called the police and never went back. The house was soon up for sale a month or so later. Food bank delivery to homebound elders. I always fill 2 banana boxes of all types of food and deliver it to his house. One time, after delivering to him for 3 years, I had to come inside because he'd hurt his foot. He had never thrown out a single box. They lined every wall and entrance. He built a castle around his bed and a series of paths through his house. It was like those pillow forts you could make as a kid, but with boxes. I asked him if he wanted help getting rid of them, and he said no, that it was fun and helped with his dimension. He was super fun. I mean, I guess cardboard boxes are a lot safer than some of the other things that people can hoard up big piles of to inevitably fall on them. As long as they're not alone and they have daily visits for food, I think that guy was all good. I tutor privately, so sometimes I meet clients at their homes. One lady had a huge shrine to Bob Burdella, which is really confusing because usually women attracted to serial killers gravitate towards the attractive ones. I did apartment maintenance for a while. We started quarterly inspections, and the first day we opened the door, the smell that came out to us was indescribable. The guy who was with me was ex-military, and he said that we were about to find a body. As an employee of the maintenance community, it tends not to be a matter of if you ever find a body, but when. He told me that he'd go in alone if I was uncomfortable with it, but I went in too. We didn't find a body, but we found a mountain of trash that took up the entire dining area. And honestly, just trash everywhere that accounted for a lot of the smell. Most of it was food packaging. We also found a dog, a very sweet golden retriever that was starved for attention. It was obviously just being left to go number 1 and 2 all through the unit. It probably hadn't been outside in weeks based off the smell and general condition of the unit. We went outside, locked up, and called the property manager for her to come by. While we were waiting, the tenant came home. The look on his face when he saw us was terrifying. The manager talked to him and they set a plan about cleanup and gave a time frame for him to get the unit back in order. The other maintenance guy stayed with him for a while that evening. When we left the unit, he was sure that the guy was going to self-delete that night. Turned out the renter had recently gone through a very rough divorce where his children had been removed from him with very little warning and he was spiraling. I left the company before I learned how it all ended. I hope he's doing better. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I delivered pizza for about 2 years. I had to deliver to a local motel pretty frequently. One day I went to deliver, and a large lady, I'm talking 6 foot, 220 pounds, was decked out in leather attire. She answered the door, ready to get down to business, and then immediately closed the door and threw a robe on. She apologized profusely, and then tipped me $10 for the situation. Sure, I could have gone in, but when these situations come up at 16, you never play them like you think you would. Also, she took one look at me and probably thought I was way too young to be her client. Damn baby face, I look like I'm 20 and I'll be 30 soon. I delivered pizza, but for older customers, I'd always go to their homes to bring it inside for those who were severely handicapped or just didn't have the strength to bring their food inside. One time I delivered to this lady who was covered in cat hair, head to toe, and the inside of her house was rancid. I mean, I couldn't go in there without holding my breath every time. One time I went there and she had in her kitchen on a table a paper plate with what looked like teeth. And I mean a lot of teeth. Different colors and shapes, just horrifically repulsive. I don't know whose teeth they were. From what I could tell, she had all, if not most sorts of the things. I haven't heard any stories about her since then, so I'm guessing she's moved or something else. I'll never forget that smell, though. Ugh. I'm a journeyman house painter by trade, and I've been self-employed in the profession for over 20 years now. About 10 years ago, I was going to paint an older woman's home. She was probably 75. I was painting the kitchen and the attached small family dining area. All of the furniture was moved, carpets were out, pictures were off the walls, the place was ready to paint. I always start by removing the faceplates from outlets and switches. First one, just 2 screws, I pulled the plate off and found the outlet full of termites. Packed. Dead, thankfully, but this was an indication something bigger was happening here. I went and I asked the woman about it, and once she saw it, she called her representative at ABC Pest Co. to come over immediately. After explaining the situation, he was quickly on his way. I went to standby mode. I wasn't going to paint anything if the house was coming down. Luckily, the client had purchased the paint and she was going to pay me by the hour. The project I was going to be painting was going to take me about 5 hours total, for $125. Well, the pest control guy looked all around the house, pulled a few more outlet covers off, with the same results. They were all packed with dead insects. He changed into full coveralls and climbed under the house. He was only under there for a few minutes, maybe 3. Out he comes and declares the house a total loss. The floorboards, he said, were hanging on by a thread. The walls were all soft and about to be pushed out. The entire house could collapse at any moment. I packed my tools and said my goodbyes. I told her not to worry about paying for my time. I'd been there for about an hour, and she had much bigger problems to deal with. Honestly, I felt so bad for her. She'd probably been in that house for about 20 years and now it was condemned. I didn't want to ask anything else of her. I do know other people have demanded payment for their time. Not me. She lost her home. I learned a lesson. Do an annual inspection of your entire home, or you could lose it. My uncle's a handyman, and he went in to do some work for a family, and the toilet was just a pile of number 2. Not like someone didn't flush, rather nobody did, and the bowl was just crammed full of hardened stool, which had clearly been in an accumulating scenario. I painted a girl's room one time while she laid in bed and played on her phone and took naps. I knocked and expected her to leave, but she just laid back down. It was very strange. I used to work pest control, went into student accommodation to deal with insects. I can't remember what type, it was carpet moths or bedbugs maybe. Anyway, that's not the point of the story. This one room is fairly clean, but we have to spray all fabrics with the chemical in question to prevent any eggs from having a safe space to gestate. So we open up suitcases, wardrobes, that sort of thing. One suitcase is full of used tampons that she was saving for frick knows what, actually, and I don't want to know. Nasty stuff, that. I didn't mention it, it was just the job, and I tried to avoid eye contact at the end. I'm a face painter who does children's birthday parties. I've never had any super sketchy experiences, just a few run-down homes, but the kids always have fun. I went to one house, kinda messy and smelly, but no big deal. I started setting up my supplies and then I heard a weird peep sound above me. I looked up to see a guinea pig running through a clear plastic tube attached to the ceiling. Then I take a good look around the house and notice the whole place is covered with a network of guinea pig tubes. The mum noticed me looking around and nonchalantly told me they had like 10 guinea pigs. I think a lot of us as kids would have been very envious of that setup, but now as a jaded adult I can only think of the cleanup, which is more than Michael Scott ever thought of in his 40s when he wanted to set up a tube city. So maybe it's not purely a maturity thing. I did a carpet cleaning job with my uncle. He couldn't lug around the carpet cleaning equipment because he'd gotten hurt the night before, but he had already promised this job would get done. No biggie, I went along to help. He had asked the owners to move heavy stuff around so he could clean. The dining room table was covered with packaging labels. I looked behind the table, there were adult movies stacked on the floor. Tons of them. Going into the master bedroom, I found a bottle of lubricant, adult fun toys, and more movie boxes. My uncle shakes his head. I told them we were going to be everywhere. You think they're coming on to us? The biggest kicker came when we went to go into the adult son's bedroom. A glass pipe, more movie boxes, and a rack of clothes by the bed. My uncle just shakes his head, goes to grab the rack, and like a mummy from its coffin rises a girl from underneath the blankets on the bed. Half undressed, they casually just walk away into the hallway. You know, hearing all of these make me feel so much less paranoid about the cleanliness of my house when professionals come over. I work as a maintenance guy in a community of more than 500 units. Let me tell you, if you've been working here for 7 years, you've seen it all, from someone's house being completely infested with roaches to a person whose house was floor-to-ceiling hoarded with old newspapers. The one house I'll never ever forget belonged to a lady who had a lot of mental health issues. I went over to her unit to check for damages after Hurricane Florence. When I went in, I was overcome with the smell of pure sewage. I asked her if her toilet was acting up. She said she didn't know. I was like, okay, I'll check for you. When I stepped into the bathroom, there was number 2 piled above the rim of the toilet. I asked her how long her toilet had been non-functioning. She told me she didn't know. She doesn't flush the toilet because that's how the devil gets into her house. I work in lead abatement for a city and county-run program. It's mostly low-income people that receive the free or heavily subsidized work. The people receiving the work are out of their homes for a week or 2 while we work. So many people will just leave so much food out. This one lady was going to be out of her house for 2.5 weeks while we did a bunch of stuff. This witch left a full raw turkey just laying out on the counter. Of course, we toss it by day 4 because it's starting to stink and attract a lot of flies and bugs. A week later, she came by and wanted to get it to cook it, and became incredibly hostile when we told her we'd had to throw it. The city ended up buying her a new turkey that evening. Another family left about 10 pounds of raw chicken on their stove. Like, not in a pan or a bag, but laid out directly on the stovetop. We threw that crap out as well. One of the more recent ones was a house that was occupied by a group of Nepali immigrants. There was about 3 full families, about 15 to 20 people living in one house. Apart from the human waste in the basement, and the dead chickens they left around, they had a little chicken coop in the basement as well, their house was infested with roaches. Not like seeing one a day, but opening a cupboard and dozens falling out. It was so disgusting. Then there was this other guy, a piece of crap who kept his dog locked in the basement for days at a time. There were hundreds of piles of dog doo and literal puddles of urine on the basement floor. The sick part is that the weird F left the dog there knowing that they'd be out of the house for 2 weeks. The neighbor ended up taking the dog and gave it to their daughter who lived elsewhere. At last I heard the dog was doing much better. But to clean the basement before we painted it, we literally had to spray Febreze in our masks to not throw up. A more sad one was this extremely old lady, like 90 years old. She needed someone to help her daily, as even just getting up was a struggle. But her crappy kids refused to ever help. There was a hole in her living room ceiling going into the bathroom. Like you could reach your arm through and wave to the people below. It was right next to the toilet and had just rotted out because whoever installed the toilet didn't use any type of ring seal. Every time you flushed, crappy number 1 water would just splash downstairs. They had a red Solo cup taped to the leasing pipe to catch the water. And now for the ethically disturbing stuff. This program was for people with children under 8, because lead has been linked to numerous developmental disorders like autism, and due to limited funding, in order to get the work done, the people had to prove they had a child in the house at least 4 days a week. Holy F. So many people messed with this, claiming they watched their niece or nephew 4 days a week and potentially taking away the ability for someone else to have the work done that actually had kids at risk. This one slumlord, who was renting to the dog guy mentioned before, really effed with the system to get 8 houses done for free or very close to free. The total amount for the work done was above 200 grand. People even went as far as taking lead paint chips from a different house and putting them in or around their windows to cheese the tests. I went to install a tube-style skylight in a bathroom. The owners had the gayest bathroom I've ever seen. It was impressive. Think Roman decor, marble, and just everything involved a man's eggplant. Light switch, toilet paper holder, towel rack, shower curtain hooks, all of it was just shaped like male anatomy.
Babysitters of Reddit. What were the weirdest rules parents asked you to follow? I was told that the only thing she specifically wasn't allowed to do was eat a bowl of sugar. I mean, babysitter or not, this is just good advice. I wouldn't want to be the person consuming 150% daily value of the sugar intake. I had to change the kid's cloth diaper every 2 hours on the dot. The kid was 6. I assumed it was for some sort of disability or something, but no. His parents just didn't want to potty train him, and the kid was content with being babied. I remember just making the kid put his own diaper on and encouraged him to use the bathroom if he had to go. I never went back. I had to put the kids to sleep with the CD player going. That wasn't the weird part. It was a recording of their parents basically going, "Molly, you are wonderful. You are a star. You're going to shine bright." That isn't super weird, but it was like several hours long, and apparently they listened to it every night. Yes, I have someone watching my turtle while I'm on vacation over Christmas. As a joke, I printed out the daily affirmations, "You are the best turtle," "Your turtle shell brings all the boys to the yard," etc., and said she has to read them to Tammy every day. My friend did not find me funny. No hot sauce after 9 p.m. To give some context, the kid loved hot sauce, but his folks were super overprotective. Maybe they had heard of people eating too much hot sauce and throwing up as it would not settle? Honestly, the kid was made of solid steel. We went to Taco Bell pretty much every time I babysat. My mom told me a story of when she had to babysit during her teenage years. She did it for this religious family whose church did not believe in television or their members watching it. She would bring a portable TV with her to watch once the kids were asleep. The parents came home, and they were captivated by it. They would invite her over just so they could watch television. Not necessarily a rule, but the first time I went to their house, they told me about their daughter's very serious peanut allergy, walked me through the EpiPen, prevention, phone numbers of their neighbors who were doctors, all fine so far. I took this very seriously. But then the mother put her hands on my shoulders and said, "If she dies, we wouldn't blame you. It wouldn't be your fault." While I appreciate the thought, this freaked me out and I was 100 times less comfortable. This has the same energy as going up to someone and just saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault," over and over, to the point where it seems less like a reassurance and more of driving them crazy. Asked me to drive their 3-year-old twins around in my personal vehicle for 2.5 hours because, quote, "that's the only way they can nap." No. I simply put the kids in their beds, closed the door, and they were asleep in 15 minutes. Not a rule, but a single mom once told me to use the bat by the door in the event the kid's father comes by and tries to take them. That was pretty weird and uncomfortable. Hippie family. The 2-year-old had no bedtime and no rules. Quote, "She can eat what she wants, no bedtime, and if she falls asleep, leave her wherever she crashed." The parents came home at 2:30 to a toddler eating chocolate cake on the couch with their preferred American Pickers on TV. That's fine, apparently. 6 months later, the mom is very pregnant and asks that when the baby is born, if I could wrangle the toddler while the mom gives birth in a bathtub at home. The 2-year-old was to be in the room watching while I explain what's happening. I left that evening when the parents came home, fried chicken in the toddler's hand, keeping up with the Kardashians on TV, and denied their next request to come sit. As a 20-year-old, I wasn't prepared to see the mess of someone else's home birth. Lady, I'm a babysitter, not an RN. Ask someone else. I used to babysit for this family when I was in high school, in the 80s, and they had no books or reading material of any kind, except that there would usually be like 2 sections of the Wall Street Journal and a running magazine lying around. No books. Anyway, once I went over there, and the mom told me like 9 times, begged me, not to eat the box of Nilla wafers that was in the cupboard because she needed them for a recipe the next day. Begged. I was like, okay, got it. They're totally safe because I don't even like vanilla wafers. She kept mentioning it, and it was the first thing she asked about when they got home. Can't believe it, this woman got the Nilla wafers. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the family gave me instructions to let their kids drink chocolate milk, which they were otherwise not allowed to have. I think they wanted their kids to associate babysitter time with fun time, so the parents could go out more often. Seemed to work out well for them. The kids both grew up to be successful people. To give him warm milk in a baby bottle right after every dinner. He was a fully functional 10-year-old boy. Edit, to answer some of the questions, yes, he was fine with it. His parents were otherwise normal, as far as I saw. The kid himself was great. His teeth seemed fine from what I could remember. Not that I really would have paid attention to that back then, but I just found him on Facebook, and it looks like he did have braces around 14 to 15 years old. If Brady stands by the door, it just means he needs to go out, open the door, and let him back inside in a few minutes. Brady was a 4-year-old boy. OP, are you sure? Are you really sure that you weren't dog sitting at the time? That might have actually been my mom and little brother. When my brother was 3 to 4, he was learning to pee like a big boy in the big boy potty. Well, Mom turned away for a second to do something, and my brother must have nudged the toilet lid or something because it came down and smooshed his boy parts. He was terrified of the toilet for a year. He told everyone that, quote, "The potty busy," and he refused to use anything resembling a toilet that year. Mom didn't want him to regress back to diapers, so she let him pee off the back porch and convinced him to poop in a little kid's training potty. He refused to pee in it, though. I'm sure anyone that babysat us during that time was confused and concerned. If you like what you're hearing, remember to hit subscribe and check out Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. Thanks for watching! The mom had me put her kids in their car seats and sit in the driveway with all the car doors open while she just hung out inside the house. 5 hours of me standing in the driveway, watching them sit inside their car. Never returned. Edit, I meant to say I never returned to babysit for her again, not that the mother mysteriously disappeared. As for people asking why I didn't take them somewhere, she specifically asked me to just sit in the driveway with them. I also didn't have my driver's license yet, so I couldn't have taken them anywhere, even if I wanted to. The kids were twins who were 4 years old, I think. They were weirdly well-behaved and didn't complain about what we were doing. To this day, I have no idea what she was doing inside or why she didn't just let them play in the yard. I am just as confused as you. Oh my god, thanks for asking because you reminded me of a weird thing. The 3-year-old daughter had to watch this VHS tape of a live Fleetwood Mac concert before bed. I was like, okay, cute. That's adorable. 3-year-olds love the weirdest things. She's so quirky, and this'll be fun. But she didn't love it. She always wanted to watch Land Before Time instead, but it was always on the note left for me. Like, pager number, pediatrician, chicken soup for dinner is in the fridge, and watch Fleetwood Mac at 6:30 before bed. Obviously, the family eventually found out I wasn't making her watch it, as I had no freaking reason to believe it was a secret. They were clearly upset by this, and I was never called back to babysit. So that was weird. Wasn't a rule, but on my first day, they sent over an adult male friend of theirs who asked to come in. I said no, and was then told I was being tested and I had passed. This reminds me of the time my dad called our house phone when I was 8 or 9. My parents had gone to the movies and my 15-year-old sister was in charge of watching my brother and I. He called the house and I picked up, and he said in a weird voice, "Hey little girl, is your mom or your daddy home?" And I told him, "No, they went to the movies." And he said, "Oh, okay, well, I'm a friend of your dad's, and he wanted me to drop something off, but I don't have your address. Will you give it to me?" And I started to spit our address out like it was nothing, and in the middle of me saying the street we lived in, my dad yelled, "No, that's so, Caitlin, no. You never, ever give out your address to anyone on the phone if you don't know them." He had called to see how things were going, and just figured he'd see what I would do if he pretended to be a stranger asking where I lived. So anyways, I failed his test, but learned a great lesson. When I was about 14, some friends of my parents asked me to babysit their 9 or 10-year-old son who wanted a boy babysitter. When I got to their house, the mom told me that her son loved poached eggs and asked me to make him a poached egg on toast for dinner. She quickly explained to me how to make it as if it were something really simple and easy. Later that night, after wasting half of their eggs in a hopeless effort to make a poached egg, I asked the kid if he liked scrambled eggs. He said he loved scrambled eggs and ate them without complaint. When the parents came home, I apologized for using up their eggs. They laughed and seemed to appreciate the effort, although the mom explained it again and insisted that it was really simple. I'm almost 40 now, and I still suck at making poached eggs. And it cracks me up that the mom thought a 14-year-old should be able to whip one up based on a few instructions. On the other hand, as a parent, I appreciate the heck out of that kid. Edit. Wow, I love that this has brought out so many good egg poaching tips. Now I need suggestions for hollandaise. Immersion blender. Immersion blender solves everything. Only 2 hours of reading time. To be fair, the mom was a librarian and her 2 kids were adorably nerdy. They had an entire room filled with books, and even then we'd make trips to the library from time to time. The rest of the time was supposed to be outside or doing some activity. It was a super sweet deal too, because she paid not only for her kids to have a pool pass, but me as well. So we basically went every day all summer, and we would play in the pool. One had me feed her 1-year-old only from a freshly opened baby food container. If she only ate 2 or 3 spoonfuls, I was to throw it away, and when she wanted more in 15 minutes, I was to open a new one. I thought it was so she would finish her meal and be full for a while, but she said it was okay to feed her every time she wanted it. I would probably throw away 5 or 6 jars in a 2-hour sitting. They cost more than I usually made for sitting. Time for a babysitter horror story. Babysat for a woman who knew my mom. She had 2 kids, both acted like feral animals, kicked and bit me very hard when I told them no. She had her TV behind a plexiglass thing because they keep breaking TVs. She had locks on the outside of the bedroom door and crib set up that essentially locked the younger kid, 3 or 4 years old, into her crib. It had a top that you pulled down and padlocked the sides. It was absolutely horrific. The kids screamed bloody murder when I tried to get them to listen. Their grandma who lived next door came over. Did she come over to help me out? No, she gave these kids cookies and crap-talked me for not being able to control them. Like it's my fault that her grandkids act like animals and not the fact that their mother apparently treats them like animals and she herself gives them treats when they have temper tantrums instead of putting them in timeout like a normal person. Their mom promised to be back by 9, important because I was in high school. She wasn't back until 2 a.m. and that was after I started calling all the bars to find her. I was planning to eat dinner afterwards, so I was starving. I called my mom and she ordered delivery for me. The grandmother got angry that she didn't order enough for the kids too and guilted me into sharing it. The mom finally came home, paid me $10 for 10 hours of babysitting, even though we agreed on $20 for 5 hours, and she proceeded to crap talk me next time she went out, saying I was lazy and a bad babysitter. She said I should have beat their butts and locked them in the bedroom when they started acting up. Edit. My mom and I contacted Child Protective Services afterwards a few times. Unfortunately, nothing came of it. Where I live, they give people 24 hours notice before inspecting a house, so I'm sure she was able to hide whatever, or they just gave her a warning, I don't know. I never babysat there again. Not a babysitter, but my friend was 24 and his parents asked him to watch their house while they were gone. They left a list of rules and instructions. It was on a laminated paper and looked like something for a 10-year-old. He was not allowed to answer the door, and if someone kept knocking, he was to call the cops. The mother asked me to stop by the house to meet her 2-year-old son a week before I was supposed to babysit him for the first time. I pulled up to the house and saw that the young boy was standing at the glass front door with a t-shirt on and nothing else. I go in and I must have given the child a strange look because the mom started to explain that her son doesn't like to wear pants, so they let him run around pantsless with no diaper on, though he isn't potty trained. I told her that this made me uncomfortable and asked if I could put pants on him when I was watching him, and she got upset with me and said that they don't like to make their 2-year-old son do anything he doesn't like to do, so they let him run around without pants on, which unfortunately means he goes to the bathroom on the floor since he won't wear a diaper and he isn't potty trained. Not a rule, as I only went there once, but a very odd request. I used to work housekeeping at a hospital. A doctor that was frequently on the floor that I worked on asked me if I could watch his kids on Saturdays. He had 3 toddlers, ages 2, 3, and 4. His wife didn't work, but wanted time to go shopping and get her hair and nails done. I totally understand, as my son was 4. I was also allowed to bring him. I get there early as the doctor is getting ready to leave. He says he's cooking breakfast, and while he gets the kids fed and dressed, could I help change his wife's tampon? She drank a lot the night before and was completely passed out and was leaking and messing up their sheets. He's a doctor! I told him I should work for someone more than a few minutes before I go rummaging in their private parts and that I'd tend to the kids if he tended to his wife. What I really wanted to do was leave, but the kids would be home alone with their hungover mother, so I chose to finish cooking and stay. He went upstairs and sent the kids to the kitchen, where I was putting food on plates. After a little while, he popped his head in and said it was a short day. He was done upstairs and he was leaving. I never met the wife. He came home at noon, gave me $100, and I never spoke to him again. One woman I found through care.com was just generally pretty weird. Some of the weirder things were, only let the kids have 3 spoonfuls of peanut butter each. The boy might want to throw softballs at me. Just try to catch them to avoid getting hit. Also, if he doesn't want to brush his teeth, just hold him down and do it for him, even if he's screaming. Also, both times I babysat, she didn't tell me when she'd be home, and didn't show up until the middle of the night totally wasted. The first time she forgot to pay me, and I was too nervous to say anything, so she had me pick cash up from her mailbox later in the week. She shorted me $5. The kids screamed, hit, fought, and made messes the whole time, and wanted me to chase them around the yard with sticks. I did not. I also stopped going there. Get ready for a creepy story. I was 13 and was babysitting my neighbor's kids. It was my first time, so the parents walked me through all the rules about the bathroom and TV and food and bedtime, etc. Just as the parents were taking off for the night, the mom came back in and whispered to me, "Don't go into the basement." As a teenager in the 80s, my mind went to all of the scariest movies that had basements. I avoided the door to the basement all night until I had put the kids to bed. Then, I walked slowly to the door and put my ear against it. I heard what sounded like whimpering. And then, it sounded like sad laughing. I ran to the couch and started watching TV to get my mind off of it, but then I heard something fall in the basement and knew someone was down there. I really don't know how I got the courage/stupidity to do it, but I went over and opened the door. The whining instantly got louder. I went down just 3 or 4 stairs so I could peek down, and I saw a goat. Not a ghost, a goat. As soon as the goat saw me, he started bleeding loudly. It scared the crap out of me. I went upstairs and the goat was still bleeding loudly. So much that it woke up the kids. The oldest girl came out and said, "Did you open the door to the basement?" I said, "Yeah, why?" She said, "When you do that, Carlos thinks you're going to feed him and he starts yelling." Thank God I knew it was a goat first, because if she had said that before I went down, I would have thought Carlos was some kidnapped person in the basement who would yell for food. It became very funny to me. The mom came home and I told her what happened, and she almost died of laughing. They were repairing the goat pen and had to keep him in the basement for a few days. I still remember every moment of that night vividly. Edit, since a lot of people were asking, I think she told me not to go into the basement that way, either to mess with me, or she was so used to telling her daughters not to go down there that she didn't even think of how creepy it would sound to someone else. I bet that goat was probably driving her crazy over the last week. I never really had any rules to follow, but I did have one terrible mother. The mom asked me to babysit her 3 kids overnight. As I was in high school, I couldn't do it, so she said she could be back by 9 p.m. I figured it was fine and let my mom know, even though they only lived a few houses away. The kids were great. We played around, watched a movie, I fed them, and put them to bed. 9 p.m. rolls around and the mom was nowhere to be found. She hadn't left a number to reach her, and I figured she was just running behind. I cleaned up and watched some TV while waiting for her. 10 p.m. hits, not home. 11 p.m., nope. Finally, at around 12 a.m., I call my mom. I explain what's up, that I'm tired and have school in the morning, etc. She agrees to come and stay at the house with the kids till their mom shows up. Turns out, she didn't come home until around 10 a.m. the next morning, long after my mom had called Child Protective Services. She gave my mom $20 for 16 hours of babysitting. None of the neighborhood kids were allowed to babysit for her after that. When I was a kid, I got paid $75 a week to watch two boys over a summer. It was amazing money, but the dad was a big bow hunter, and he made loads of deer chili, and he insisted that his 10-year-old and 2-year-old eat tons of it. They loved it, but the 2-year-old would take these massive, awful, horrible, nasty chili dumps constantly. The dad explained all this to me, and my instructions were to just put him in the shower and hose him down. I was offered plenty of chili, but never ate any. I was babysitting a 3 to 4-ish-year-old girl and an 18-month boy. The boy had to be carried in a buggy, which is all very well, but I was supposed to add some kind of mini stairs, 2 steps on the back of it, so the girl could stand on it because her legs get tired, said parents while making quotation marks with their fingers. The darn thing hit my legs every time I took a step. That kid was also taught to not wait and look for restrooms when she needed to go and proceeded one time to take a dump in a public garden and wipe herself with a leaf with an ease that certified me that wasn't her first time. What is the most inoffensive thing you've seen someone get offended by? My 7-month-old was wearing a shirt that had a rocket ship and the NASA logo, and some middle-aged woman in the shop said, "He shouldn't be wearing that because he's clearly not an astronaut." I was dumbfounded. I still remember in kindergarten when my friend and I were reading all the colors out loud on one of those Crayola super packs. I straight up got yelled at and sent to the principal's office for saying, quote, "orange pizzazz," because the teacher said I called someone a pea-butt, not censored, and would not listen despite having the crayon as evidence. After a 30-minute scolding and waiting for my mom to leave work to pick me up for my suspension, she came in all apologetic. When I explained to her the whole situation, not the school side, Ma went ape. I'd heard her say crap once. That's the only swear I ever heard from her, and we had just been rear-ended in traffic. How about
Yeah!
Can he say
Yeah!
Cause you're all being
Yeah!
right now. This is ridiculous. And just went off while I'm sitting there all surprised and the principal is just red AF. I got unsuspended on the spot, but she pulled me out of school for the day anyway. We had a lovely day, and she explained very well how I shouldn't swear like that unless absolutely necessary and I've exhausted all civility. Quote, "When being civil simply isn't working, sometimes you might have to call someone a pea-butt." The next day at school, I learned that I now had the stigma of being the kid who got the Crayola super pack taken away. We were choosing a mascot for a summer camp where I worked. It was the first day of camp, and we'd always let the campers vote on a mascot that we'd use for the rest of the summer as a sort of bonding thing. This year, the kids voted for wolves as the mascot. It was almost unanimous. But one kid, probably about 9 or 10, threw a fit because wolves are, quote, bad guys, and predators and killers, and he doesn't want to be a wolf, he wants to be a hero. He refused to participate in any team activities because he didn't want to be on a team with the, quote, bad guys. At one point, we brought in a guy in a full mascot wolf costume for some anti-bullying program, and the kid had a massive tantrum. I almost felt like we were going to learn at some point that his brother was killed by wolves or some other tragic origin story. I did feel bad for the boy because I was fairly certain he had some kind of unaddressed emotional difficulties or something, but we weren't going to change the mascot name that almost everyone voted for. The really sad thing is that wolf populations have suffered a lot due to stereotypes that they're bad. Friendly reminder to go watch The Bad Guys, a beautifully animated DreamWorks movie with a bumpin' soundtrack and a cast of characters that are incredibly fun to watch. Using a walking stick. I was in a car accident a few years ago and it screwed my leg up. Since then, I've been using a walking stick. I was walking to shop, pre-pandemic, and an old bloke gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. "What do you need a cane for? You're only a kid." He actually got quite mad just seeing me using a stick. Like, my dude, I'm just out trying to buy some milk. I don't need your crap today. I didn't say that out loud, I just said it to myself after I got home. Maybe 22 years ago, I had a phone interview with a baking company. I didn't care to have my peers know what I was up to, so I took the call on my cell phone in my car. The call was crystal clear and no technical issues. At one point, they had mentioned the weather and asked how it was where I was. I told him that I was sitting in my car and I could see that it was actively snowing and whatnot. The interviewer asked me, "Are you taking this call on a cell phone?" I told him I was. Then he asked me if I thought that was appropriate. I asked him what he meant by that. He said he thought it was kind of rude to take a formal call on a cell phone. I told him I would be more than happy to conclude the interview if talking on a cell phone was an issue. If he was interested, I'd be happy to continue it the next day when I'd be at a desk. He again repeated how rude he thought it was that I had called from a cell phone and that there was no need to continue the interview process. I disagreed with the first point, but did agree with the second. To this day, I wonder what the heck he was talking about and where he was coming from. One time, someone got offended when I put on my seatbelt, thought I was commenting on her ability to drive. We used an app on work called Bonfire. One person refused to use it because bonfires are for witchcraft and pagans. I spent 9 hours deep cleaning the house for an inspection. I went above and beyond, clearing my work schedule and going the extra mile, and my roommate, quote, double-checked my work. He had a complete psychotic meltdown because I forgot to sweep underneath the couch. I moved out the next day and never spoke to him again. I was at the vet with my cat and he sneezed. This was apparently very offensive to an elder woman. She was there with a corgi, and she started screaming at me for about 30 minutes about pet hygiene. At school, someone didn't have a calculator and asked if anyone had one they could borrow. Someone offered them a pink calculator and they refused, saying that they were offended they'd try and give them something girly. Fellas, is it gay to do math with a pink calculator? I once listened to my boss try to lecture the fire marshal because he was talking about something being flame retardant. Her reasoning was you should just call it fireproof because retardant was an awful word. It was one of those times where I really should have tried to stop her, but instead, I just stood off to the side, probably making a surprised Pikachu face. I got in trouble in kindergarten for saying the word dead. Apparently it was too violent.
Oh my god, have you not subscribed to Am I the Genius yet? That's literally so offensive. You should do it now and subscribe to Am I the Jerk too. So link in the description or whatever.
I had a coworker who got mad at me because I asked her not to tickle me. A, that's inappropriate at work. B, we're not children, we're not in a relationship, and we're not family. C, I don't like being tickled. She flipped out and said everyone likes being tickled and I was being mean to her. Happily, my boss had my back. Edit, this happened over a decade ago. I don't work with that woman or for that company. In fact, even the company doesn't exist anymore. I am also a woman. The coworker was very young and immature. This was her first job, her first time in a professional environment, and she really had no clue about professional workplace behavior. I wasn't upset because she truly thought she was being friendly. But I still don't like being tickled. When I was a child, my mom paid for something with a check. The cashier remarked that my mom had nice handwriting. My mom flew off the handle, and we had to storm out of the shop in outrage. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I'm a disabled person. My life sucks because of my disability, and no longer being able to do the things I used to love makes me quite depressed sometimes. Some jerkwad tried to lecture me about how I was ableist for wishing there was a cure for my disability. Screw me for not enjoying being in constant pain and possibly ending up in a wheelchair in the future, I guess. I worked at a restaurant, and we put up some Halloween decorations. We had to take them all down when someone found the glittery skull decoration offensive. My mom got mad because, and I quote, she never asks me for money, referring to me. I'm sorry? Would you rather I constantly bug you for cash so I can buy candy and stuff? Back when I was in grade school, a teacher of mine was discussing something. I don't exactly remember the context. And he said, God or a God, in order to be neutral to those with various religious beliefs. and probably to cover his butt, since he was commenting about religion while in school. And the girl in my class got so upset/offended about it, she started bawling about how he is being disrespectful to her beliefs. The Pixar short Lava. He walked out saying it was deeply offensive and didn't explain why. Gets offended. Refuses to elaborate. Leaves. Profit? Typing in someone's phone number to activate their rewards card. Finished typing it in, found her name, proceeded with the transaction, and said, "You're good to go." The woman replied with,
What is that supposed to mean?
and she gave me a fiery glare as if I just kicked her toddler across the store. It means, I found your information. You'll get your points. Oh, okay then. I still can't figure out why she flipped out like that. It was a rewards card. She got her points and she got her discount. What? The only possible way I can imagine getting offended by this is from never having heard that phrase before and assuming it meant I would like you to leave. But even then, that is quite an assumption. Race tangent. I called someone fam and she blew up at me, saying that I clearly meant the N-word. Had someone get offended by me calling my brother bro. They insisted that I was racist and that white people can't be related to Mexicans. Like, seriously, lady, that's not how genetics work. We are 100% related and are a mix of white and Native American. It's not that unheard of for one biological sibling to come out lighter or darker than the other. And even if we weren't related, seriously? I'm racist for calling someone close to me my bro despite being different skin tones? Seriously. Thank you for coming to my rant session. Have a good day. Someone once got offended because I used the word black in conversation. I was talking about an article of clothing / the color black. They tried to make it into something about race and that I shouldn't use the term black anymore and should say African American. I said that makes no sense. I'm literally talking about the color black. Am I supposed to say I'm wearing an African American colored shirt? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that's actually offensive. This has been a race tangent. The Canadian flag told me that if they put up a Canadian flag in Pennsylvania, the neighbors would come and shoot everybody. Not quite sure about the logic on that one. This guy at a Halloween party I was at was dressed in a giant bacon costume. Some girl was yelling at him for being so offensive towards Jews and Muslims. She was neither Jewish nor Muslim. One of the Muslim guys at the party asked her what the heck she was talking about, but she didn't back down. I have no idea why people feel they need to go out of their way to be inaccurately offended on behalf of other people's cultures / religions. A picture of an eye. We have an organization-wide theme every year, and all the PCs on our network have the same background and theme, which can't be changed. So, this year's theme is Vision is 2020, and the background was a zoomed-in picture of an eye in really awesome colors. 2 women on staff wrote letters to complain that the picture was, quote, heathen, as it drew from, quote, Illuminati imagery and paid tribute to the, quote, all-seeing eye of Egyptian deities. They whined and complained to such an extent that the picture was eventually changed to shut them up and let the normal folks get back to our actual work. This. An article from BBC states, Professor Greg Padden at the University of Southern California, USC, was telling students in a communications lecture last month about filler or pause words such as or you know in Chinese. Footage of his lecture, which has now gone viral, shows Professor Patton saying, in China, the most common pause word is that. So in China, it might be ni, ge, ni, ge, ni, ge. Enunciated, ni, ge, sounds like the N-word, which led several of the professor's students to complain to the university. Responding to the complaint, the dean of the university, Jeffrey Garrett, told students that Professor Patton would no longer be teaching the course. Quote, it is simply unacceptable for the faculty to use words in class that can marginalize, hurt, and harm the psychological safety of our students, he said. The university says that Professor Patton, quote, volunteered to step away from his role amid the investigation into complaints made against him. This is the stupidest thing to get offended over that I've seen in quite a while. and damaging to actual cases of racist terminology being used inappropriately. This reminds me of the discussions people have had in class about books like Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird, where uses of the N-word have historical context. Nobody asked for my opinion, but here's what I think. Preserving history is instrumental in teaching ways to prevent it from happening again. We need to know what bad examples look like so we can set better ones. If we completely sanitize history and skip over it, it defeats the purpose of learning it. I told my sister in a private message that it's, quote, first, spelled 1ST, not first, 1RST, after she posted something on Facebook with a spelling error. She flipped out, saying how I'm a, quote, bully, and I need to, quote, appreciate that her spelling is more unique. Edit, she's 27. I sang the song Hit the Road Jack to a kid I just beat in a game while in the 3rd grade mockingly. He took that as me calling him a jackbutt. He told the recess monitor this. I was told to stand against a wall away from the rest of the kids with the recess monitor. I am now 27, married with 2 kids, but I will never forget this. If you ever see this, I didn't call you a jackbutt, Jared, but now, screw you forever! Got chewed out once for saying, yes ma'am, to a lady. I'm in the South. That's what we do. Southerner here, I can explain this one. So when you refer to someone as ma'am, usually what that means is that they're either older than you or it's used as a term of respect. So if you're addressing one of your superiors, you'll usually say, yes ma'am. As for the age of someone you're talking to, if they're only a few years older than you, they might take that as you thinking they're old. Which, I know, that sounds kind of stupid, but some people are really sensitive about their age. So tread with caution. A sandwich. I kid you not. My ex-husband was given a sandwich by our then 13-year-old daughter, and because she cut the sandwich, he went off on a massive strop about how his sandwiches should never be cut. The poor kid's face, she was crushed. It still winds me up to no end every time I think about it. I managed a small, new team that had no procedures or policies, so I set about instituting some. Quote, I mean, you never know. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then no one would know how to process these requests, I told them, when asking for their feedback and for them to write up how they did their tasks. Then, we would come back together and decide best practices in a meeting. Little man filed a complaint to the manager for my use of, quote, violent imagery and said that he felt threatened. It was a whole thing. Ultimately, he got fired. Screw him, bye! Edit, well, this blew up. For clarity, he didn't get fired for this one incident. He was a horrible employee with real issues having a woman in charge. In French, we have a way to address for a man, monsieur, a married woman, madame, an unmarried woman, mademoiselle, and we used to have one for an unmarried man, mademoiselle, which disappeared from official paperwork since I don't even know when. In the name of gender equality, mademoiselle was also removed a few years ago from official paperwork. Also, in the name of gender equality, some employees were told not to call young women mademoiselle anymore and to go with madame. So the trick is, some women will get offended when called madame because it makes them feel old, and some women will get offended when called mademoiselle because it's sexist. Clerks are doomed. I'm a white South African. Born here, my nationality is South African. Some American girl got offended that I called myself South, quote, African as a white dude and said that only people of color can call themselves that. Brah, it's a nationality. The kid that got the cops called on him and suspended from school for having a Nerf gun in his room during a Zoom class. At my wedding, we marked the vegetarian items as vegetarian. This made the one vegetarian at my wedding, sister-in-law who hates me, fly into a catatonic rage because we are singling out the vegetarian food as vegetarian and not treating it as normal food. Then how the heck are they supposed to know it's vegetarian? I had a pastor that insisted we call candy canes, quote, Jesus sticks, because Christmas is all about Jesus, y'all. Ain't no fun to be had otherwise. Well, I was 7 and accidentally referred to the Holy Jesus stick as a candy cane in his presence. and I crap you not, he speed walked over to my dad to tell on me and carry on about how offensive it is to see all the world trying to remove Christ from Christmas. It starts in the home, den of sin without Jesus, something, dark side. My dad asked him if he was serious. Spoiler, he was very, very serious. And then told him to grow up. And that's how my dad dressed up as Santa a couple weeks later and came into the church yelling, "Ho, ho, ho, candy canes!" while passing said satanic candy canes to all the little children during the children's church portion of service. The pettiness runs deep, and it was delicious. When my ex and I were looking at houses, we brought his dad, let's call him Dave, to see houses we already liked. The real estate agent didn't spend enough time on telling Dave he was right that the bottom step was too tall. So later that night, I got to hear an hour-long lecture from Dave about how the agent was a piece of crap that was trying to take advantage of us. A large reason I'm single now is because my mental issues are too much to deal with, but Dave here is definitely a contributing factor as well. An AIDS walk happening in front of our restaurant. My boss said, well, they better not come in here spreading their disease. I was like, dude, that's really not how AIDS or their walks work. One Easter Sunday, a lady in church was wearing a hat that had the Easter bunny, chicks, and colored eggs as part of its design. The woman in the pew behind her took umbrage, telling the lady that Easter was about the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, not about, quote, silly rabbits, chicks, and eggs. This happened just last week. I work at a bank in an affluent part of Atlanta. Read old white money, and a woman called in to let us know she was offended by the security questions for her online banking. The security questions she herself set up. What was your mother's maiden name? That's none of your business! My dad loves to tell the story of how, shortly after they were married, he and mom went to get some fast food. As they pulled up to the drive-thru window, my very conservative mom saw a sign that said, condiments available upon request, and said, oh my god, that's disgusting. Why would a restaurant feel the need to give those out? She had misread it and thought they were giving out condoms upon request. One of my coworkers was surprised and said, oh my god. A religious coworker overheard her using God's name in vain and reported it to HR. They had to have meetings with HR and the managers about respecting people's religion. The lady said, oh my god, she didn't wish for the death of Christianity. It was ridiculous. Yeah, fun fact about that oh my god thing people love to get their panties in a twist about. The whole reason you shouldn't use the Lord's name in vain is so you can't murder people and say that God told you to do it. Abraham and Isaac is the prime example of this. God literally had to intervene and be like, hey, yo, Abraham, chill out. I didn't say you could do that. Reddit, what's something your family doesn't know about you? I just get in my car and drive. I never really have a destination. I just need to leave. I've done it ever since I had access to cars. My mom will ask why I have a sleeping bag in my car, and I'll just lie because I don't want the hassle. Edit, I know this is a do what I say and not what I do situation, but if you do this or want to do this, please tell someone. Stay in some sort of contact. I don't like cheese. Seriously, Mom, you have the memory of a goldfish. I'm 18 and I bought my first scratch-off and won $10,000. I put it in savings and parents don't know I have it. The week after graduation from high school, I tried to hang myself in the basement, but the rope broke. I wasn't going to college, and I didn't see a bright future ahead. That was 5 years ago as of this past Friday. Right now, the world seems very dark still, but I'm trying hard, and I'm fighting every day to keep moving forward. I'm studying graphic design every day, haven't touched games for months, yet they think I'm playing video games when I'm working on my computer. Dad, I'm not actually that incompetent. You breathing down my neck when I'm cooking/driving freaks me out. Also, I haven't been a virgin for years. Where I live, what my phone number is, or whether I am even alive. I'm actually so sad there's no story for this, but I imagine some serious crap must have went down in order for that to happen. That I'm infertile. They are waiting for babies, but they won't be coming. Hey, same here, guy. But I told my parents almost immediately, and they were very supportive. Tough break. Good luck on your journey, and hope you have someone you can talk to. Feel free to vent if you ever need to. I got suspended from school because I used to skip lessons all the time. Weirdest punishment ever. My mom knew and didn't want to tell my dad as she knew he'd be disappointed, so she told me to work hard and get back on track. My dad left for work earlier than I went to school and got home after school finished, so I would just lie and pretend I was at school all day. I'm nearly 30 now, and he still doesn't know. I faked a job offer so I could move to another city that is 3,000 miles from them. The reason I faked the job offer is because I still want to maintain a relationship with my family regardless of how controlling and oppressive they are. I got an actual interview, did everything, but was not chosen. Instead of telling them that, I made fake contracts, an offer letter, and I showed it to them. Since the documents are in English and my parents can't understand, they just ask me questions and things, so lying is much easier. I just pack my suitcase, live off couch surfing, work a temp job for money and food for a while. It's hard, very tiring and financially unstable at first, but now I have a job, peace, and much more confidence in voicing my opinions and feelings. I am also slowly mending my relationship with my parents. Soon. That I'm a retired multimillionaire at 39 years old. They just think I'm a freelancer who travels a lot. It's for the best, I think. I hate my sister. She is self-absorbed and attention-seeking. She starts conflicts and is proud for standing up for herself. Girl, you wouldn't be in that situation if you didn't start it. She's always the victim. My parents' sister and brother walked on eggshells around her just so she wouldn't flip out. I did for the longest time until I got tired of her. I was labeled the jerk for setting her off. Edit, my sister has seen several different therapists and has not been diagnosed as bipolar or with a personality disorder. She has had one therapist tell her to go elsewhere because she is too confrontational. Me saying that I was labeled the jerk was more of the way I felt. Nobody actually called me the jerk. I was the one that was told to bite my tongue. That I'm badly depressed all the time, except when I visit them. Going back home is just so comforting, and to know that it's always my home, no matter where I am. I seriously dread the day I lose this. It's one of my biggest fears. It can help to open up about it, especially with those you love and feel comfortable around. A year ago, I was drowning in debt, and my depression had sunken to the lowest it had ever been. The only thing I could feel was a general numbness, and every other thought was about ending my life. I was seriously considering going off into the desert and doing it. I was too proud to tell anyone my problems, and I didn't want to burden anyone, so I kept it to myself. My dad picked up on some of my issues and offered to have me come home and live there while he pays for a bankruptcy for me and to get my head straight. I wasn't going to do it because of my before-mentioned pride, but I was considering ending my life instead. It struck me how dumb that was at work the next day, where I broke down in tears and quit. I called my dad the same day and told him I wanted help. He flew out and helped me move back across the country and did everything he promised he would. I have no doubt in my mind that I would be dead right now if I didn't get that help from my family. My advice, don't let it simmer that long. Reach out for the help that is likely to be right there for you. It sounds like they would understand, and if not understand, at least offer you help. Don't fight that pit of numb darkness on your own. Let those you love and trust help support you. It makes a world of difference, even if it doesn't quite feel like it at the time. I understand Ukrainian, and I know they talk about how I should have been aborted or given away. I have a huge tattoo on my forearm that I've had for the last 10 years. I'm currently getting it removed with the laser, but I've been using long sleeves whenever I get together with the family. My family is extremely conservative. Freaking annoying in the summer. That I'm a millionaire. I'm super frugal and don't show it. But every time I make a big purchase, they raise an eyebrow. Hey, you don't need to keep it a secret that you're subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. They're both worth subscribing to, so go ahead. And remember to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. I used to have a crippling opiate addiction and contemplated ending my life numerous times, but was able to detox and get myself clean cold turkey all without them even knowing I had the problem. I've since had a conversation with my dad about it. He thought I had just decided to move away from my home because of a better job, when in reality, it was to separate myself from all of my old connects. I actually took a pay cut at the new job. Anywho, 2 years later, I'm doing better than ever, However, I have stayed out of town for obvious reasons. Edit, I wasn't going to edit this because of the cliche thanks for the gold stranger edits I see all day, but there are too many to reply to individually. Those of you congratulating me, thank you. Those of you struggling with the problem yourselves, please find someone to talk to. Heck, message me and I'll help with as much advice as I can. Also, I didn't do it 100% on my own. I had my wife and my young children with me as well to motivate me. I can't recommend Kratom enough for people either. At the time I was kicking opiates, Arkansas banned Kratom sales, so I wasn't able to get it, but a few months down the road when I finally went to a different state altogether for a way better job, Kratom is what helped me say no to people that had H or pills. It also helped my father-in-law get off of a long-time pain management script that was destroying his body. They don't know that I'm their least favorite child. They also don't know just how much their opinion of me still matters to me. I've kept a diary for the last 23 years, including a great deal of detail about them, both good and bad. Some very bad, bordering on criminal. My sister is the executrix of my will. Should be interesting after I die. I love them more than I show them. I can't show love to anyone in my family for some reason. They probably think I don't care about them, but I do, and one day, I'll tell them. Edit, thanks to everybody who gave me their advice or just took their time to talk about their lives and experiences. I won't respond to everyone because of limited time, but I truly appreciate all of your comments. I, male 20, come from a family of 4, 3 sisters, 13, 26, 28. I never could show any affection to them for some reason. I never in my life told my parents or sisters that I love them, except for my little sister. I will definitely change that as soon as I finish work today. Life is not guaranteed, and I want to open myself to them before it's too late. Thank you again, everybody. That means a lot to me. If I have anything to say to repay the favor you did to me, you all should start or continue being true to you. Being genuine is the best thing you can do to improve your life. Love y'all. Cheesiness aside, it really is a shame that men aren't allowed to express affection. The rules of society basically dictate that if you're a man who shows affection, you're seen as weak or vulnerable. And it's not just affection either. It's emotions in general. In reality, most men don't know how to deal with, recognize, or regulate their emotions, and that's partly because of the stigma. It's seen as emasculating or feminizing, which the perception of femininity as negative is a problem in and of itself, but that's another conversation. In short, if you as a man keep all of your emotions locked away, they're going to either get bottled up and explode or be lost entirely when you need them the most. That I crashed a car on purpose to get out of work 3 years ago. Being bullied at work and couldn't face going back. So I crashed my car, slowly, into a tree so I could have several months off while I recovered. Didn't do it to hurt myself or end my life. I have severe anxiety, and work made it 1,000 times worse. Yes, I know it was stupid, and yes, I know I could have done a million other things, but I needed a way out instantly. Edit. Didn't claim on insurance, but got full sick pay for 6 months, and on the day it ran out, I quit. Also, went to psychotherapy as I was a tad worried I would do it again in the future, for diagnosed with Asperger's and severe anxiety. This was the UK, so no health insurance. It's government/tax funded, so it wasn't fraud. I did feel guilty I wasted NHS's time, but not anything else. Wanted to share a positive story. I am getting married in October. After my grandmother and my mother and father died, I separated myself from my cousins, aunts, uncles, surviving grandparents because our family was so toxic. In that 4 years, I fell in love, developed a new family, and have been quite successful. You never know who is dragging you down. And before anyone asks, I made multiple attempts to rekindle relationships with my family, but it's a two-way street that no one else was driving on apparently. My parents divorced in 2000, but were on and off after that. My mom and dad died 3 years apart, and because of his drunken ways and random knocks on the door, I was relieved, and I wasn't invited to the funeral or included in the obituary. I still have a little darkness from it, but there is so much light now that it drowns it out pretty well. I still have moments with my fiance when I'll get upset because something triggers me, but we talk about it and move on. I have garnered a pretty big following as a fanfic writer, and thus writing fanfic is actually the most successful thing I've accomplished in my life thus far. Edit, holy crabola guys, this just blew up in my face. Wow, this is what it feels like when you accidentally write a popular fanfiction. What just happened? Well, I'm going to try to address some frequently asked questions and state some things here. First off, so many soulmates, so many fellow fanfic writers. Hello there, hey! I have no one specific fandom, though the popular fanfic I am talking about is a fanfic called Second Chance, A New Choice, which is a Harry Potter fic posted 10 years ago and is still getting daily favorites to this day. I don't know why, don't ask me. Due to the popularity of the thing, I've even teamed up with the real editor and is currently reworking the entire thing. My fanfiction account is called Moonbird, which is my 10-year-old account where I just post any old crap. My archive of our own account is called Moonybird. It is pretty new, and I only post stuff there which I myself consider my best works. Yes, I have started to write stuff that isn't fanfiction. I am, however, very happy and grateful for my time as a fanfic writer, and it has taught me so much when it comes to writing in general, and I still write fanfiction. Heck, I'm in the middle of writing a Loki-centered MCU fanfic. No, I don't earn money on it, not a single dime. I do it for fun. It's my hobby. That most of them are just people to me. I don't feel any obligation to love them, but a bunch of them are fun to be around, and I consider them friends. Love is too strong a word though. I feel far stronger attachments to my friends, who I've nurtured relationships with for decades because we have lots of things in common that aren't as arbitrary or invisible as DNA. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree here, at least to the extent that it feels like an obligation. Every single family event I've had, it just feels like that I'm there because I have to be. And it's not because I really want anybody to be there. Like, don't get me wrong, I still love my family and I wouldn't just leave them, but I hardly find myself making new memories with them. That's why I value my friendships online so much. They just feel closer and I feel like I know them more than my family. And for that matter, my friends know me more than my own family does. I'm not lazy. I'm just severely depressed and have PTSD that makes my everyday life a struggle. I try to behave and do as I'm told, but half the time, I don't even see a point in staying alive. I'm sorry I'm not the perfect child you wanted me to be. How much debt I'm in. My mom probably has an idea, but student loans aren't a joke. I'm going to school for cyber forensics and will be graduating this year. However, I have only recently realized that, while I am good at networking and technology, my 2 years actually working in the field has shown me that it does not make me happy whatsoever, and it actually makes me miserable. I'm an expert in IT, networking, and security. However, I hate doing it. I've realized recently that acting is what makes me happy, and I want to pursue that despite being deep in debt for a major in cyber forensics. Back when I was in high school, I did several background acting jobs for movies and commercials, and this summer have gotten back into it, and recently just did a background acting job for an upcoming Netflix series releasing next year, and it's made me realize that that is what makes me happy and gives me personal satisfaction. Acting. You do something new every single day. You meet new people and make new connections and friends every single day, and you get to be part of something amazing, and I can see myself making a living off of acting. My family doesn't know that my major and job experience and what I am skilled in actually makes me miserable, and doing something as stupid as acting, even if it's just background acting and acting in student films, makes me happy, and that I regret not going to school for film. But once I am graduated, I am going to keep pursuing acting jobs and see where it lands me. Even things as small as background acting makes me so happy and I love it. My mom thinks that after I graduate that I plan on going for my master's in this field, but I know that it'll only give me more debt for something that I have absolutely no interest anymore in getting to. I don't know how to tell her that I decided not to go for my master's. TLDR, the field I am majoring in and have years of experience in makes me miserable, and I want to throw it all away for acting. My entire family is proud of me for going into a major that makes a ton of money and that I've built a successful career already in said field, but it's made me miserable. Money is awesome, but at what cost when you're miserable every day? They don't know the actual amount of difficulties that I had going through my life with undiagnosed ADHD. I got diagnosed at 28 after having essentially my third mental breakdown because of the huge amount of pressure and disgust I put onto myself for failing to do even the simplest things. I told my parents and they were devastated, not because I had ADHD, but because they never knew or suspected. And honestly, looking from the outside, it was impossible to see. I was valedictorian, graduated college magna cum laude, participated in tons of activities, seemed to have friends, etc. but I was so broken and only did those things because of deep shame that resulted in an almost attempt at my own life that my body saved me from. It's hard to allow yourself to die from exposure. I was hoping to make it look like an accident, but after my body said, nope, not gonna happen, I realized I really needed professional help. I'm doing much better now, but I know my parents wouldn't handle that well. I cried every night for years. I'm 21 and never had a date or any kind of romantic contact to a girl. Everybody thinks I'm a super funny and confident person, but they don't know that I suffer. Well, that actually changed some weeks ago. I met a girl and had my first kiss, and I'm going on a date next Saturday. That the divorce I'm going through is a lot harder on me than I'm letting on. I wanted the divorce. No one in my family liked my ex, and they are happy I'm getting away. But the divorce has been dragging on for 2 years now and is really taking its toll on me. The first year things were fine and my family saw that I was a lot happier. But it is dragging on to the second year because my ex is refusing to cooperate and is trying to manipulate the system. I am at risk at losing time with my kids and losing half of my life savings and having to pay 50% of my paycheck in child support for the next 15 years. Note, my ex makes more than me, which is the most frustrating part. She has no problem supporting herself. She talks crap about me to my kids, but I am trying to take the high road and ignore it. It is depressing realizing I have to deal with her for 15 plus years. A big reason my family doesn't know I'm struggling is because they haven't been there for me. My mom has had some health issues and can't travel. My dad was supposed to come out for Father's Day, but changed his plans. Because my daughter had a recital on Father's Day, I had to spend time with my ex's family on Father's Day. I live close to my brother, but he makes no effort to plan events with my kids. We were even supposed to have a joint birthday party for our kids because they're a couple weeks apart, and he straight up forgot, promised to quote, make up for it, but has not reached out since. I made Dean's List for my last semester in college. I'm super proud of it, but I found it out when we were celebrating my little sister's graduation, and I didn't want to take it away from her. I also didn't want to feel like I was rubbing it in my twin's face. She apparently feels threatened that I graduated a year early, even though she's always been much more academically successful than me. Back when I was 24, I took about $300 in cash with me to a trip to Vegas with my grandma. She is well off and didn't want to go alone. She has a timeshare with a company that lets her pick and choose where she would like to go for 3 weeks each year. Her friend backed out due to illness, and she decided to invite me. We have a wonderful relationship, but when it comes to money, we don't really discuss it. Way too long a story. One night, I tell her I'd just like to go wander the strip alone. She's fine with this, as I come off a bit intimidating. 6 foot, 235 pounds at the time, long hair, kind of a biker/metalhead vibe. I ended up at the Luxor playing Texas Hold'em. I went from $250 to $30,000 in about 4 hours of play across 4 different tables. I invested that money in the stock market, and if I cashed out said stocks right now, I would have about $2.4 million. No one in my family has a clue. I live extremely humble. For some reason, I feel like they would all come at me for loans and such. I just don't want to deal with that. Reddit, what zero-tolerance school stories do you have? Make them juicy. My sister almost got suspended in the 3rd grade because my mom put a plastic butter knife in her lunch one day. I forget why she needed it for her lunch. One of the lunchroom aides spotted her using it and sent her right to the principal's office, and they called my mom to come in. This was 10 years ago. My cousin, 1 grade lower than me, got into a fight at school. Zero tolerance policy says they are both suspended. Attached to this policy is if a student is involved in 3 separate fights within their time at the high school, then they were expelled. Within 2 weeks of my cousin returning, one of the guy's friends started a fight with my cousin. They are both suspended. A few weeks after he returns again, another friend of the original kid starts a fight with my cousin. In each situation, the other kid threw the first punch. Zero tolerance each time means it didn't matter. That is how children outsmarted the zero tolerance policy and why my cousin graduated from a private high school. When I was in year 10, grade 9 for Americans, we all had to line up to go into the dinner hall. For whatever reason, they put the menu with what they were serving that day at the front of the queue, so I walked to the front to read it. As I was walking back, a tiny year 8 kid shouted over to me, "Hey, stop trying to cut in the line, you jerkhead." I just told him to screw off and mind his own business. as it's the kind of school where if it looks like you're giving in to a younger kid without fighting your corner, you won't hear the end of it. Then the little crap rugby tackled me, but he was too small to knock me over, so I just kind of stood there awkwardly as he tried to kick me. After a while, I'd had enough, so I grabbed him and picked him up, put him up against the wall where he was standing before, and turned to walk off. The headmaster was standing right in front of me, and he'd been watching the whole thing. We both got sent to the quote, reflection room, which is like a higher form of detention. The only time I got in trouble was for trying to walk away from a fight started by someone half my size who I probably could have hurt if I wanted to. Thanks, headmaster. Now I know in the future that I should just deck the little bugger instead of being gentle because the punishment is going to be the same anyway. In 9th grade, I was in a class that had some disruptive students that always caused problems for the teacher. During the semester, they were forced to sit at the desks nearest the teacher's desk. I wasn't a bad student at all, but for some reason, I was forced to sit in the front of them. I was mad. One day, we had a substitute, and my entire row gave the sub a very hard time. When the actual teacher came back, she forced everyone in my room to detention. Many other students protested for me, even the bad students in my row. She said, quote, "That's too bad." From that day forward, I helped the quote, bad students to not get caught whenever they screwed with her. Not me, but my niece once had to do a school project about the Voyagers. We lived in a relevant area, in the computer lab. So she innocently typed in furtraders.com/org/net whatever. Of course, it was adult pictures. She got suspended. Left a BB gun in my friend's car in high school. Security saw it and he got kicked out. I talked to the principal, who was our friend and mentor, about reversing the decision or taking the punishment myself. He was just as upset as me, but he kept explaining that his hands were tied. He finally just looked me in the eye and said, "Zero tolerance." Actually, he used my name afterward, so I knew the conversation was over. My friend graduated from an alternative school. I once got suspended because a security guard found an unloaded airsoft pistol in the back of my truck. Let me be clear, by pistol, I mean those ones made of clear plastic, and by back of my truck, I mean behind the passenger seat of a crew cab with tinted rear windows. The security guard is really doing his job, eh? Making these suburban high schools safe for everyone. Also, I had a friend who got suspended for bringing a metal butter knife to school with his lunch. A knife is a knife, people. There could be no tolerance for weapons or logic and reasoning. 2 people got suspended for fighting off-school property with each other. Also, not my school, but a local school, and it made the news. A girl with Down syndrome or an intellectual disability said a popular athlete touched or assaulted her in the library, and they made the girl write an apology letter to him, only to find out later he did do it, many times. When I was in 10th grade, I was eating dinner with my family, and my dad accidentally spills his beer all over my shirt. No big deal, so I go upstairs and take my shirt off for the night. The next day while I'm getting dressed, I see that I'm out of clean shirts to wear, so without thinking, I grab the shirt from last night and put it on, eat breakfast, and get out the door. The day was pretty normal, until I was called up to the front office. I wasn't really a bad kid or anything, so I wasn't too worried. Once I arrived, the principal informed me that another student told him that I smelled like beer and assumed that I had been drinking. I told the principal about what happened last night and assured him that I had not been drinking. He tells me that it still counts as bringing alcohol onto school grounds, and for that, I was suspended. TLDR, some people drink their alcohol, others wear it, but it is all the same in the eyes of the principal. We have a zero tolerance, no fighting rule in our gymnasium. Like, even if you lay down on your back while you're getting jumped, you'll still get expelled. Happened to get in a fight with a guy I could honestly beat down, but since I really didn't want any trouble with the school or at home, I just blocked my head until the principal came by. After a minute of discussion, he told me that I'd get suspended for 2 weeks, even when I told him that I didn't hit back. So I did what any teenager would have done, I think. I got loose from the principal and beat the other guy down and took my punishment. I won't tolerate you not being subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk either, linked in the description below, so you better subscribe, or else. My school had a zero tolerance policy on cell phones and electronic items. Obviously, you can't convince a high schooler to not bring a phone with him or her, so the administrators would do, quote, raids occasionally and bust some phones each time. They didn't give it back until the end of the year. In high school, I got suspended for 1 week because I had a bottle of prescription painkillers in my locker. I was taking them because I got a serious knee injury while playing for the school baseball team. I also got kicked off the team and wasn't allowed to participate in any sports at school for the last 2.5 years of my high school education. The principal explained to me that they had a zero-tolerance policy to drugs of any kind. Worst part is, I could have went to at least 10 different lockers in school and shown him drugs in there, but he wouldn't let me because I shouldn't be, quote, snitching on my peers. Screw you, Principal Vickers. This one's a long one. After I'd beaten the original Half-Life, I started rooting around on the install CD and found out that they had included Worldcraft on the disc, so I installed it and gave it a shot. Mapping very quickly became a hobby of mine. As a result, I got very interested in architecture and geometry and started to take more notice of the way buildings were structured and laid out. I tried to get my friends into it, but I clearly took to it more than they did. But that was totally fine, since it meant I had a group of dedicated playtesters at my disposal. Anywho, I had mentioned something about the blocky, boxy design of our school, and that it would translate pretty easily into the grid-based, low-polygon world of Quake-based maps. I can already see where this is going. As a few of us were walking between classes, we talked a bit about it, pointing out how to model each shape, where we could cheat and optimize things, where we might need to do manual VIS leaf splits, and so on, but didn't make any plans to do anything. That evening, I went home and blocked out about a 15-foot squared area and abandoned the idea after a few hours because the school itself was architecturally boring and pretty tedious to work on. It's important to note that I didn't publicly release this work in progress. That must have been in the middle or end of a week. Fast forward to the next Monday, and my biology class is interrupted by 5 or 6 police armed with pistols. They entered through all 3 classroom doors at the exact same time and must have known the seating arrangement ahead of time because they instantly focused on me and moved in extremely quickly without breaking into a run. 1 took my backpack, at arm's length. 2 took me in that arm-twisting underarm hold thing where they kinda half-carry you. I was never cuffed. When we got outside, I saw at least 3 more, 1 with a shotgun, 2 more going through my locker. When we got to the administration building, I was led into a room in the back and kept there for pretty much the rest of the day and questioned on and off by various cops and guidance counselors/school psychologists. They wanted to know where I had hid my bombs, how many guns I had access to, if I had stashed extra ammunition anywhere, and reminded me repeatedly that if anyone had stumbled across one of the weapons I had hidden somewhere across the school, I'd be liable for anything that happened. They said on several occasions that they had enough to arrest me for conspiracy to commit murder and insisted that I just cooperate and give up my compatriots. Needless to say, I was scared and terribly confused. Apparently, over the weekend, the little discussion I had had with a few friends as we were walking through the halls had been overheard and grossly exaggerated. The idea to make a level had transformed into me already having a level of the school completed, placing entities such as doors had transformed into placing students everywhere, and doing it in the Half-Life engine apparently meant that I had built a massacre planning tool. What the police had heard from their source was so vastly different from the reality I understood that I spent the first hour of questioning completely lost and confused because I genuinely could not understand what they were asking about. Their source had apparently said that I individually replicated the entire student body and thusly asked who I planned on targeting first. I tried explaining how long hand-making 2,000 models and textures by hand would take, but they seemed to tune out every time I opened my mouth. Their source maintained that I had publicly released this map and that he had played it multiple times at my insistence. There were other things. My dad had been on Paris for business and had grabbed some French newspapers for me, which I had stashed in my locker, waiting for a show-and-tell opportunity in my French class. I spent probably a half hour of my questioning reassuring the police that this was, in fact, French and not some kind of secret code language that I was using to communicate with people. They took the newspapers and I never got them back. After the initial holy crap they're pointing guns at me wore off, it was a very strange day. One of the cops, I don't remember who, must have eventually figured out what was going on because he and I spent the last hour or so talking about Pixar and computer animated movies. I understand that they sent police cars to my family members' houses and searched at least my parents' house, but I don't think they had a warrant. My dad was out of state at the time, and my mom did not take my side. I'm pretty sure she waived my right to have an adult or attorney present during questioning, and I know she told the cops to arrest me and that she would not post bail. I know exactly who the police's source was. I was good friends with him and his brother for a few years. I have not spoken to either since I was dragged out of class. I have no idea what I did to anger either or both of them. It's important to note that this was sometime after the turn of the millennium, but before September 11th. If it was afterwards, I am completely confident I would have been on the receiving end of a proper SWAT team and the entire school would have been evacuated. TLDR, zip zop zoobity bam, time to nuke Afghanistan. I went to a very, very, very crappy school district. I mean, this place is scum in so many ways. My little brother has ADD and mild autism. He's a very nice kid and always has been. I mean, he opens doors for everyone and compliments people he doesn't even know. Anyways, there was a kid in his grade who was the biggest jerk. He was mean to everyone, even the poor kids who were his friends. He always picked on my brother and his friends, calling them the R word and everything else. One day, we get a code red. Everyone is stuck in their classrooms, and there had been a recent trend in girls fighting in the bathroom, so everyone assumed that was what was going on. No, I wish it had been a girl fight. I get called down to the office about an hour later. My brother and his best friend were walking to class. They were at the top of one of the stairwells when Jerky McJerkhat came up behind them and shoved my brother down the stairs as hard as he could. My brother tried to grab onto the brick wall to stop himself from falling and ended up dragging his hand down the bricks, ripping his hand apart. He still has the scar. He hit his face on the tile at the bottom after doing several head-over-heels rolls down the stairs. His nose and lip were bleeding, and his back was hurt so bad they thought he had broken it. He ended up going to the ER. Fast forward a week later. He's back in school and the principal calls him to her office. This woman. I don't know how this woman was ever allowed to work in a school. She made my brother shake hands with this jerk and make up. She said the alternative was both of them getting suspended because she did not believe my brother did nothing to provoke him from pushing him down the stairs despite 2 witnesses telling her what had happened. My brother has been bitter over that ever since. Also, when my mom found out she had to shake Jerky McJerkhat's hand, she went to the school and confronted the principal. The principal told my mom, well, maybe if your son wasn't annoying, it wouldn't have happened. My mom pulled her across the desk and a secretary had to pull her off of her. W's in the comments for that, mom, please. There wasn't really a zero tolerance thing back then, but school was over. I was starting my walk home and a friend runs by and drops his bag by me and yells to me to carry it. We were going to play hockey after school, so whatever. Nothing of circumstance came of it. I never heard where he was even running to. Next day, teacher is all ticked off. I go in to see the principal, and turns out my friend was trying to pick a fight. Mind you, apparently all he ever did was run after someone but never even got close to them. Not even the same block. There was no fight. This also happened all outside of the school. So naturally, my friend was suspended for a week plus remaining days in that week. And because I carried his bag, I was an accomplice in the fight, which never happened. I was suspended for the remaining days in that week. There was like a 2 to 3 day vacation for me that I was happy to take. It was all crappy rainy days, but I was happy to leave. Not quite zero tolerance, but my friend's sister grew up in quite a foul-mouthed household with older siblings. Her first words were, "son of a gun," blurted out emphatically for no apparent reason at the breakfast table. And when she was quite young, 1st grade, some boy pushed her on the playground. She called him a boob, he broke down and cried, told a teacher she had to eat lunch on the psychologist's office the rest of the year because she was a danger to the other students or something, and her mother, quote, had to come in. Mother told them that if they thought that was the most pressing issue they had, she thought they should look harder. Didn't go to the meeting. She's awesome in general. The boob got in no trouble for pushing her because he told on her first. She could have easily beaten the crap out of him. I'm in Britain, where zero tolerance isn't really a thing. I think the closest thing we got to zero tolerance were when teachers would hold an entire class back in detention, including the ones who were not disruptive and were doing the work. It seriously made me angry when I was at school. It happened mostly during years 7, 8, and 9. I'd have been 11 when I started year 7, which is the first year of secondary school in Britain. I know a girl who got suspended for having cough drops in the back seat of her car. I don't have a story, but I was blamed for a fight that happened on a weekend that wasn't even on school grounds. This kid who doesn't even go to my school, who has a name really similar to mine, got in a fight with some kid at my school, so naturally, they thought it was me. Thankfully, a couple days earlier, my friend told me about said fight, so I was able to provide some background information to get myself out of blame. But they took me to a friggin' room with the school cop and some other people, and they were treating this like a massive deal. It's a fight that happened on the weekend at a skate park, and one of the kids doesn't even go to the same school. Why are you meddling in their business? Bully punches kid in face. Kid doesn't fight back because he knows he'll get suspended for fighting. Kid lets the bully hit him until a teacher gets there. Teacher gets there and gives a detention to the bully and the bullied. My stepbrother and his friends all got suspended for pretending to have lightsabers at recess. No, not plastic ones, literally their imagination. A boy bullied me for almost an entire year, called me fat, that kind of thing. I said if he kept talking to me, I was going to kill him. I got in-school suspension for 2 days. He got a talk from the guidance counselor about how you shouldn't bully girls you have a crush on. Edit, it's been so long that I don't really remember what happened, but the reason I got caught is because the teacher saw me crying. She came over to investigate while he was harassing me and heard me say that to him. Because the teacher didn't hear him say anything to me, I was the only one who got in trouble. Chewing gum. Rather, looking like I was chewing gum because my jaw was sore from having rubber bands on my braces. Ended up in an isolation room for the rest of the day and then got suspended for a week. Looking back now, I realize how stupid most grade school suspensions are because it doesn't really teach you anything other than the fact you get a vacation for looking like you're breaking a silly rule. The parochial school I went to had a zero tolerance for LGBT teens out of the closet. My senior year, right after I came out, the vice principal pulled me out of study hall and into his office to confront me about it. I'll never forget. I've heard some rumors. Are you gay? With the look on his face as if I had threatened to shoot the school up. Long story short, it was either go back in the closet or be expelled. I didn't want to leave because it was my senior year, I was almost done, and I wanted to graduate with my friends. In retrospect though, seriously, screw that guy and that school's administration. A kid from my school tweeted, quote, "suicide bomb, #RIP." This was apparently some references to a song, and the dude tweeted it right after a breakup. Anyway, my school decides to evacuate everybody for 3 hours while they bring in over a dozen K-9 units. There were 3 news helicopters there as well, along with a bunch of cop cars. The kid ends up being expelled. I once got detention because the 2 guys behind me were talking in line. We used to have to line up several times during the day, army style, straight lines with uniform inspection, perfect silence. My only detention to date. When I was in high school, a girl spit in my eye. I see that as the lowest form of an insult you could possibly do to someone, so naturally, I retaliated. I yelled and screamed when my friend held me back. Eventually, due to heart issues and being overwhelmed with the stress on my body, I passed out. I woke up in a classroom, and that was about it. I gave the office my account on things, and they did their, quote, investigation. Well, if I remember correctly, it was a day or 2 later before we were both suspended for fighting. My school had a zero hat policy because of, quote, gangs. I got suspended for wearing a raccoon skin hat. I guess I was representing the Davy Crockett gang. Round 2. Make-A-Wish employees, what was the most strange thing a Make-A-Wish kid asked for and actually received? I shot an internal promotional video for Make-A-Wish once. I got to read through a big book of wishes they had granted. Some of them were so extravagant and amazing. Family vacations, celebrity meetings. And then I saw a 3-year-old who wished for a banana split for breakfast. And that's what they gave him. No one was like, "Ayo, wish higher." I helped host a visit to a planetarium by a kid whose wish was to go to the moon. The front office folks thought I could just give her a personal tour of the planetarium and show her some nice high-resolution visuals, but I thought she deserved better than that. I commissioned a jeweler friend and meteorite enthusiast to make a silver crescent moon necklace, which he graciously donated to the cause, and I donated a small lunar meteorite from my own collection. It was a gorgeous necklace, very much to the credit of my friend's artistry and generosity. We couldn't take her to the moon, so we gave it to her instead. She was thrilled, but later said her real highlight of the trip was the astronaut ice cream. Ah, kids. My daughter was a Make-A-Wish kid. She asked to go to Australia to meet the Wiggles. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to travel that far. We live in the US, health-wise. She made a second wish to meet Captain America. We never told Cap that he was a backup wish after the Wiggles were a no-go. When my sister was 5 and I was 8, she had cancer and the opportunity to make a wish. When our mom and the Make-A-Wish person sat down with her, they told her she could wish for whatever she wanted. She just kept saying she wanted macaroni. They kept saying, but it could be anything you want. Yet she simply wanted macaroni and cheese. After some strong encouragement to think bigger and the Make-A-Wish person suggesting Disneyland, she chose to go to Disneyland. My good friend had ALL leukemia. He asked for a ride in a fighter jet, and somehow he got it. I was surprised, because the doctors would say how his bones were getting fragile and weaker, and I guess I thought the G-forces of the jet would hurt him, but he was fine and had a blast. He's doing better now and is scheduled out in about 3 months. I was granted a wish after beating brain cancer in 2015. They flew my mom and I out to the capital city of our state, and we stayed in the flashiest, most expensive hotel suite with all the bells and whistles. We got free dinner, drinks, and dessert on arrival, got to chill in the VIP lounge while we were waiting for our room. Our room was decorated with teddy bears and chocolates and Make-A-Wish decorations. The next day, we were chauffeured to the local mall in a limo, and I went on an 11-hour shopping spree with a preloaded Visa card and bought every solitary thing you could imagine a 16-year-old girl wanting. I ended up having to buy another suitcase to take everything home with me, but it was the most epic 3 days of my life. I'll never forget it. Number 1. To be a merman, a boy mermaid. He got a tail and swam in the giant tank with other mermaids at the aquarium. Number 2. To play football with the quote, red team. No pro or college preference, just had to be red. USC made it happen. Number 3. To be a quote, cool kid. Got a limo ride to the mall. Red carpet entrance with cheering fans, signed autographs, shopping spree for clothes. 5 years old. So cute and very cool. Number 4. To be Robin. Not Batman. He said he wasn't ready for that. Went on an epic adventure fighting crime with Batman. I was a chef at a fancy steakhouse in Jacksonville, Florida. One day, my proprietor came to me and said, "This is Stacy, the new girl. She'll be training with you." I look over, and it's this adorable little girl in a bright pink chef's coat. I babysat my little cousins at the time, so I was actually pretty used to entertaining 10-year-old girls at the time. So I showed her the ropes. We made all kinds of stuff that were on the surface kinda random. Candied bacon, cornbread, prosciutto-wrapped Boursin cheese stuffed asparagus, a sweet tea brined pork chop, a sorrel garnish salad type thing, and some other cool garnishes. We were having fun. I then made a puree out of the cornbread, let her plate up the dish a few different ways to show how you can play with the ingredients and height to showcase different parts of the dish. She had a blast. It was only at the end when the father came up to me in tears that I realized what was going on. In the moment, I was a little upset because nobody told me, but I realized it was for the best. I probably would not have been as bright and vibrant with the lessons had I have known, but it was a fulfilling experience for sure. I sure hope that family is doing well. Side note, I have reworked and reran the dish as a special a few times in memory of that day. It was that impactful. If there's one thing in the world I would wish for, it's for you to subscribe to the Am I the Jerk channel and Am I the Genius linked in the description below. Thanks for watching, and drop a like if you're enjoying the video. It really helps. I worked at a hospice, and we had a wishing program. One of our patients, 24-year-old with brain cancer, wanted to hold a sloth. Apparently, sloths are very nervous creatures, so it's a little tricky to actually hold one. I found a local company that does visits to schools and whatnot who had a sloth. Sloths only poop about once a week, bear with me here, and the sloth could only travel the day after he pooped, because they get nervous any longer than that and the sloth has stress diarrhea. So basically, we had to wait until the sloth pooped and then set up the visit for the next day. The sloth pooped on Thanksgiving, so we set up the visit for the next morning. The patient was able to hold and pet a very sweet sloth. The patient died about 3 weeks later, and I am very happy I was able to help give her some joy in her final moments. Wow guys, I did not expect this to blow up. Thank you so much for the awards. The hospice I worked at had a special program called Faithful Wishes for any of our patients, regardless of age. As the volunteer coordinator, fulfilling these wishes was part of my job. I do believe there are other nonprofit organizations that grant wishes to adults, but nothing as large as Make-A-Wish. Yes, the sloth was tame and lived in an animal preserve. He would also visit schools and retirement communities, schedule permitting. And yes, I absolutely learned more about sloth bowel movements than I ever wanted to. I worked at a Lego retail store in the 2000s, and Make-A-Wish approached us for a child with terminal osteosarcoma who wanted to be in the store for a day. Lego unfortunately denied the request, which surprised myself and the rest of the staff because Lego was a pretty great company. Staff decided to honor the request ourselves. We closed the store early on a Sunday, then invited the kid and family in. He had a full run of the store. We collectively paid for like $1,000 worth of toys for him to take home and just spent the entire evening building whatever he wanted. He died a few months later. Not Make-A-Wish, but my brother got terminal brain cancer when he was 18. He was given 3 to 6 months to live. Back then, his only wish was to be an NFL player, but he was 5'8", all heart. He was just like Rudy in that Notre Dame football movie. He fought it for 6 years. Somewhere around his 22nd birthday, he and I were talking about having something worth living for. I told him it didn't matter what it was, but a vision for the future that he would fight for was important and encouraged him to find something to give his life to. We went on a vacation soon after that, and because we were broke from medical bills and 4 years of battling cancer as a family, this was a huge deal. We hadn't had a family vacation for a long time. A family friend put us up in their beach house and gave us some money to have a good time there. My brother came alive on the trip. It was so impactful to him that he came home and decided to start a nonprofit organization. He called it A Week Away. It was very similar to Make-A-Wish. Terminally sick patients apply and benefit from an all-expenses-paid vacation with their family or group of caregivers. That was a big deal to him to include the family, because if you've ever done something like that, you know it's not just the patient who suffers and loses their freedom, it's everyone they are close to. He worked his butt off to start the organization. He formed it and began sending families to places like the Outer Banks and Ocean City and other East Coast beaches. A week before he died, he launched his first big, month-long fundraiser. He passed away knowing that he had raised enough to send like 10 families on respite weeks. It was like he was passing the baton off to others who could keep on fighting. The org is still going strong today. If anyone is blessed to have their health and a sweet vacation spot you'd like to donate for occasional use by sick people all coordinated by an awesome organization, I'd encourage you to reach out to the A Week Away folks. You get to play a part in people's lives like the awesome people helping in these Make-A-Wish stories. There was a Make-A-Wish kid in a class I taught once, and their wish was to tour a pickle factory. Pickles were their all-time favorite food, and they wanted to see how the sausage was made, so to speak. Apparently, Vlasic rose to the occasion in a major way, and she had the time of her life. A friend of mine is a K-9 police officer. He helped Make-A-Wish grant a wish to a set of twins with the deadliest form of cystic fibrosis. Most of the time, kids with CF aren't allowed to be around others with it because of cross-infecting bacteria. Them being twins shortens their life expectancy even more. Well, these 10-year-old boys wanted to meet a police dog. My friend and some of his buddies upped the wish, and during their meeting of his dog, they got called to help solve 3, quote, crimes in their town. They pulled over a hijacker, found and arrested a robber, and helped find a, quote, missing 6-year-old, my friend's nephew. The town police department gave them certificates and honorary police badges for their work. Around 200 people showed up to where they got their awards to cheer them on. At their 11th birthday, they gave my friend a plaque they made with their dad, thanking him for the best day ever. I was approached by a similar organization who wanted to arrange a day for a kid to shadow a veterinarian. I'm just a small animal veterinarian with a small hospital, so I found it odd that I'd be approached. I said yes, who the heck would say no? And we picked a day and had our regular patients in the hospital, and the kid got to watch us do our thing for a day. We gave him a lab coat and a stethoscope and let him tag along and see x-rays and ultrasounds and watch surgeries. I brought my dog in so he could try the ultrasound on her. He seemed to enjoy it. It wasn't a terribly strange request, really. It just seems like my day-to-day isn't something anyone would consider their dream experience. In Wizard 101, there's a quest with an NPC named Brandon, named after a Make-A-Wish kid who played the game. And his request was to design a side quest for the game. You meet Brandon and go help him clear out this dungeon with 2 really hard bosses. It was a lot of fun. At the end, you get a gem you can socket that lets you summon Brandon into battle as a follower. Pretty cool. Not sure what ended up happening to Brandon, but it's really cool that thousands of people have gotten to enjoy being a part of his wish, to be honest. My cousin was a Make-A-Wish kid. He loved golf, had a scholarship to go play college, he loved it so much. He got to meet and play a round of golf with Payne Stewart. Unfortunately, he died not too long after that. Screw cancer. I know someone who was granted a wish. Of all things they could choose, they asked for 2 tiny birds, 2 budgies. After I survived cancer at 17, I was offered a wish. I went to Christmas Island with my family to see the spawning of the red crabs, reckoned to be one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Picture it, 1 million fist-sized red land crabs making their way down to the sea edge to release their eggs into the ocean over a period of just 3 hours or so. The Make-A-Wish volunteers looked horrified as I explained it. And I'm typing this now, so yes, I lived. Thanks. Edit. Come to think of it, I'm pretty sure my wish caught my family a bit off guard too. I had a coworker at my student job in college who had leukemia as a child. He wished to be in the IDOWROD, so they flew his family to Alaska and he got to meet all the dogs and ride in a sled for a leg of the race. If I remember correctly, he also got a husky puppy. He was 20 when I met him. I was a couple of years older and graduated college and never saw him again. The leukemia came back and he died in 2016. I don't think he was much older than 25. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. I hope heaven is real, just for you, Ben. When I was on a carrier, they flew a kid and his parents out. They routinely fly distinguished visitors, but we thought it was weird there was this kid. They got tours and watched flight ops, but he couldn't fly with us, so they asked us to have dinner with him so he could at least meet pilots and ask questions. It was really humbling when we realized this is what he was there for. He literally wished to just come see what we do and hang out with us. I'm a Make-A-Wish volunteer. The volunteers get to do all the fun stuff, like meet with the families, get the kids excited about their wish. We send little gifts and stuff along the way, and then be there when the wish is granted. We don't have to do any of the boring admin stuff. I have a little girl right now whose original wish was a unicorn, 6-year-old with severe epilepsy, has 15 seizures a day, and has been through 10 surgeries already. She wasn't having any of that fake stuff, like a stuffed animal or a costume. She insisted for weeks on a unicorn. That one was hard to manage. She's getting a cat. I was a Make-A-Wish kid back in 2017, and my wish was to go see a live brain surgery in Seattle at University of Washington. I loved Grey's Anatomy, I loved Dr. Shepard, and I had brain cancer, so I wanted to see what my doctors kinda saw. What an experience, and I learned so much. I was a little neurosurgeon for a day, and the neurosurgeon was playing the Pixies while operating. What a great happy moment. I won't forget. They even sent my family from Arizona to Seattle with me to have dinner with me in the Space Needle. I was a Black Hawk pilot in the Army, and we had a Make-A-Wish kid who wanted to fly in an Army helicopter. We had to remove all the seats so we could strap his wheelchair down in the middle of the helicopter, and we flew him around at treetop level, yanking and banking with the doors open for a while. I'm a wish granter. My strangest personal wish was a refurbished 80s camper so that she could have her own space. She couldn't go out in public while her transplant was new-ish, and she was going crazy in the house with 2 younger siblings. It was actually pretty cool, although the strange part was that Make-A-Wish can't actually use, quote, used things like that. So we had to get her a new VW camper, or something like that, it's been a while, and, quote, artfully make it look vintage. So strange. Anyways, please feel free to apply to be a Make-A-Wish volunteer. It's such a rewarding experience, and even if you don't feel like you can work with the kids, there's also other volunteer positions like fundraising, event planning, and more. Former employee here. Over half of the wishes are Disney-related, and beyond that, they typically fall into a few categories. I wish to travel, I wish to meet, I wish to be, I wish to have, I wish to give. You get the idea. So, I always liked wishes that fell outside of the typical wish categories. One time, there was a boy that wished for the perfect baked potato. I don't know if the wish granters went through with that wish. They may have waited until he was a little older, but I still laugh when I think about it. Volunteers are trained to ensure they are determining the child's one true wish, not mom's wish to go on a cruise or dad's wish for new tools, etc. A lot of work and thought goes into fulfilling a child's wish. My brother had cancer when we were in high school. We all got to go to an ice skating rink in New York City and play hockey with some of the New York Rangers. He was a Flyers fan, but what can you do? This wasn't actually his wish, but it was set up by the Make-A-Wish Foundation for all the terminal kids at the hospital, I'm pretty sure. I used to know a dude who got sick in high school, and his wish was to see Rocksteady Studios and be in one of their games. The studio was super cool, evidently, and they put him in Arkham Knight as a GCPD officer. Best part of the story is that he recovered, and, last I heard, is still doing okay to this day. Glad to see that I'm not the only one with this, quote, weird request. I was also eligible for Make-A-Wish when I started high school, and I asked to visit DICE at their HQ in Stockholm. I didn't ask to be in any of their games though. Dang it, why didn't I think of that? I was passionate about game development, and I still am, and thus wanted to see what it's like to work in a AAA studio, and also ask a bunch of game dev stuff. They constantly asked me, "Are you sure you wouldn't rather want to go to Disneyland?" I said, "This is my Disneyland." Guess they thought it was a weird request for a 15-year-old to make. This year, I finished my bachelor's degree in computer science, and in the future, I can hopefully land a job in game dev. Edit, I see many people here congratulating me for surviving. I forgot to disclose that the condition I have is not nearly as deadly as, for example, cancer. I have had a heart condition that has been treated through surgery since birth. This condition will never go away and can cause death even after treatment, but my doctor monitors my condition every year so far, and it's looking excellent. Just wanted to address this. Okay, this is more wholesome than anything, but a girl who was a grade above me had cancer in high school. She graduated, and I joined the band my senior year to see this plaque with her name and face on it from Make-A-Wish. She used her wish to donate new instruments to the school's band, as they were needing new ones. I still know her to this day, and she makes a ton of jokes about cancer that it even freaked out her college roommates. She's one of the nicest people I've ever met. I had a wish when I was 8 due to having leukemia and a bone marrow transplant. My first thought was, meet Bruce Willis. Die Hard was my newly discovered favorite film. But my dad asked if I wanted something that would last like a computer. I always loved playing on the hospital computers, so yeah, I went for that. Best decision ever. I might owe my career to it. I hear Bruce Willis is a bit of a jerk IRL anyway. A funeral. He knew his parents wouldn't be able to afford one, so he wished to have his funeral paid for. They were able to convince him to make another wish, and he wished for gold lockets for his mom and sister with his initials engraved on them. Edit, his funeral was paid for as well. I believe another nonprofit helped with that. They just really wanted him to have a wish for himself, but all he cared about was his family. I'm not a Make-A-Wish employee, but a kid at my church a long time ago wished to sit in a bathtub full of peach-colored loofahs. The softball kind, obviously, not the hard, sponge-like ones. He got it, and the church bulletin had a picture of this kid smiling like a maniac in a huge bathtub full of loofahs, so I guess he was happy with his wish. When my son was 3, his Make-A-Wish was to meet Elmo. For a 3-year-old, not that strange, I guess. Sent us to Sesame World in Philly. We get there, and they had no clue he was on a Make-A-Wish trip, but they were great, and he met Elmo. My wife worked as a nurse at a children's hospital and cared for a 17-year-old cancer patient whose wish was to meet Wiz Khalifa. He showed up and spent the day. My wife said they went on a walk and came back high as balls. She said it was a great day for the boy and his family. He passed away a few weeks later. Reddit, what is the best comeback that works against all insults? I bet that sounded a lot cooler in your head. Once I saw an Am I the Jerk post where a bride was jealous of a guest because she was too beautiful and, quote, stole her day, even if she was perfectly elegant, and she was insulting her. The bride told her, "So next time, can I come to your wedding in a wedding gown?" The guest replied, "If you think it'll help." And I found that epic. Anytime my mom would get called names or insulted, she'd shrug and just say, "Everybody's gotta be something." I like this one, actually. I feel like it's the least argumentative comeback here. Deflecting people or responding with a witty thing can just rile them up. Source, Psycho Family, as they take it the same way as being ignored. This one gives a sort of illusion that you accept what they've said and they've already moved on from it. Like, I've heard what you said, I've taken it in, and I let it go before the bully even has a chance to process it themselves. I feel like there's still room for reconciliation after this response. It's important to remember the other person in these situations. Not because we should be empathetic towards their abusive choices, but because we should be empathetic towards their lead-up emotions. My 5-year-old says mean things sometimes because he hasn't practiced patience and understanding enough. He's learned how to properly react, but he's not mature enough to utilize it properly every time he gets worked up. And this is not unexpected of a 5-year-old. A lot of people much older than 5 are also similarly emotionally immature. My husband didn't have much practice with patience before he met me. 10 years later, and he's all mellowed out. I'm not perfect, of course, but I am confident in my ability to stay cool in the face of craziness, which helps me remember to think of the other person. When my husband used to get irrationally upset about tiny things and then redirect that upsetness at me, I always considered that he may literally never have had the chance to learn these things before meeting me. He was, emotionally, a 5-year-old. I can't expect greatness until he's had the opportunity to learn how to be great in the first place. Although, I don't put myself through abuse for the sake of another person's learning experience. If I ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable in an abusive situation, I just leave. That's with my 5-year-old and my husband. I always tell my son, you've got a little body, but huge emotions, so sometimes they spill out a little bit. I don't want you to hurt me and regret it later. As soon as you're done letting those emotions out, I'll come in and hug you. Just yell for me. Then he screams into his pillow or destroys some Lego structures and calls me in to comfort him when he doesn't feel like those emotions are spilling out as much. At the end of his anger outbursts, he always cries in regret for having been angry in the first place. That vulnerability point is where we practice coping mechanisms for his anger. I saw similar emotions in my husband 10 years ago, albeit less obvious. Angry adults are, internally, little 5-year-olds whose emotions are spilling over, and they're scared. Not an excuse, but a shining light onto the anger process in their brains. Not sure where this rant came from today, but here it is. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That sounds like something you would say. Dang, people are right about you. Well, I guess what everyone says about you is true. My dad told me to say this, and the typical bully type will generally go crazy thinking everyone talks about them behind their back. Just say okay and move on. People who insult want a reaction. Don't give it to them. I found out just asking why and putting them in a position to explain their insult which didn't have much thought behind it works well. Pull my earbuds out with a confused expression and ask, what? Hold a stare and blank face for at least 3 seconds and then ask in a concerning tone, are you okay? Up your butt and around the corner. Worked when I was 10. Big fan of the pause for a beat, deadpan, and then some variation/combo of, you done? Feel better now? Got that out of your system? Just that pause and little bit of patronizing tone while dismissing the childlike behavior usually does more to the ego than a counter-insult. I'm a woman, and my job basically boils down to arguing with attorneys who are mostly men with huge egos and a large helping of disdain for people they deem, quote, beneath them. It's common for them to get pushy, loud, and insulting when they're not getting their way. That was intimidating at first, but now I look forward to it because it gives me an opportunity to use my favorite line. It sounds like you're getting a little emotional about this. Do you want to call me back when you've calmed down so we can get this done? This is always met with a delicious pause, followed by them either hanging up or launching into the most high-pitched screeching you've ever heard. Being called emotional by a woman who is perfectly calm breaks something in them, and it's my favorite thing. Never in my life would I have described an attorney as a, quote, whiny baby type until I worked for a couple. Jesus Christ, you weren't kidding. Attorneys who are mostly men with huge egos and a large helping of disdain for people they deem beneath them? 100% all of this. It was insane. Any woman non-attorney working for them was tasked to be their mom or maid. It was infuriating to see such a caste system in place in current times. They literally would ask you a question and then stop listening halfway through your answer. They'd hire you for one job only to end up getting another job babysitting the admin. Or the poor intern who just wanted to learn tax law was roped into cooking for the entire office. She was not trained to be a caterer, but was expected to be one. She finally just quit because she was tired of being told food service was now her job. It was an insane place to work at, and I think I made it 6 months before I realized working for these people were insane. At one point, I was working on my laptop, authorized, because we were waiting on my new equipment to show up and I had to bring in my personal computer in the meantime. The head partner knew this. His office manager knew this. I had been working about a month on my laptop and no one had an issue with it. One morning, this jerk starts screaming at me how using a personal computer was a security risk, and how does he even know that I'm working on work and not personal stuff, etc. The guy was, quote, brilliant at being a lawyer, but couldn't remember a conversation from last week. He changed his mind constantly. We'd start a project only to have him abandon or change it completely the next week. It was insanity. It opened my eyes to what kind of people lawyers actually are. I think the worst part is, commenting on this before, how many people pop up and say how a lot of them are insufferable to work for like the ones I did.
Alright, here's the 411. Say some gangsta is dissing your fly girl. You just give him one of these. You're not subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk? Linked in the description below. And like the video while you're at it.
TLDR, being in the trades gets you some good practice and comebacks. I'm an electrical apprentice, and when I first started, there was a bit of hazing and teasing from the journeymen. It never got too bad, mostly a lot of talk. One in particular was kinda on me one day, and since he was fairly young, just recently licensed, I just responded like, did someone treat you like this when you were an apprentice? Do you have some unresolved issues? Do you need a hug? Oddly, he never really responded, but I didn't have any trouble with him anymore. On the same job, the excavator accidentally broke our grounding grid, a big underground copper cable grid used to ground all the structures in the substation. So I had to jump down, in the rain, into the hole to patch it up. It was wet and muddy, but I was wearing a full rain suit. Another older journeyman, who was my foreman and had worked for my father more than once, made a sarcastic remark along the lines of, "We should take a picture. Wouldn't your daddy be proud?" I just looked up at him and said, "Well, I'm doing my job, I'm doing it well, and I'm not moaning and complaining about it." Yeah, he likely would be proud. I also had another apprentice yell at me, "Stop talking to me like I'm a freaking moron," to which I responded, "Stop talking to me like you're a freaking moron." I did kind of provoke him, but he was being really dense. And basically takes all the wind out of their sails. They want to get a rise out of you, and responding like this doesn't give them the satisfaction. I once had someone say to me, "Jesus, they let you out for the day and this happens?" I had to laugh and give them that one. Stick your finger in your mouth/cheek and pull it forward and out so that it makes a popping noise. There are many people who wouldn't be speechless after witnessing that during a conversation/argument. Well, that's just like your opinion, man. Just laugh out loud. If someone's trying to make you mad, acting like nothing they've said matters to you in the least and their attempts at making you feel bad are laughable will really take the wind out of their sails. I've done it. It's immensely satisfying. I once got punched in the face by a guy who had started trying to bully me in 7th grade. I don't know why, but I just started laughing. That uncontrollable, this isn't funny and it's not appropriate to laugh right now, but there's no way to stop it type laugh. It wasn't intentional, and I wasn't trying to freak the guy out, but he turned beet red, mumbled that I was a freaking psycho, and stalked away. He wouldn't even make eye contact with me through the end of high school, so that worked out well. I envy the people that don't know you. So's your face. Bold words for a man in white sauce distance.
You freaking Americans will use anything except the metric system.
There was a female gamer during a live stream, taking crap for some jerk she just beat. Without a pause, she drops, "I'm going to screw your dad tonight and give birth to someone he actually loves." It's easy, guys. Just repeat what they've said back, but in a high-pitched, sarcastic tone. I find it works especially well in customer service when dealing with tricky complaints.
I think I know the answer, Mr. Garrison.
Shut up, fat boy! Hey, don't call me fat, you Jew!
My dad told me to respond to bullying by saying, "Sorry about your family situation," and walk away, looking very sympathetic and sad. Like, you understand, and it's okay. I've caused a few breakdowns for sure.
Yeah, well, the jerk store called, and they're running out of you!
Just walk away while they're talking. It's probably the rudest thing you can do. Plus, you save your time, and if they call you a coward, smile in evil joy as you know they'll be thinking about this for the rest of the week. I don't get why that's funny. Can you explain it to me? As soon as they start talking, I was just kidding. I don't actually care what you think. Hit him with the old, "It doesn't matter what you think," like The Rock used to do. You want my comeback? You'd have to wipe it off your mom's teeth. Jimmy Carr. First of all, Brush your teeth.
Your mother was a hamster, and your father smelt of elderberries.
The anti comeback is my favorite. A light breeze has more effect on me than someone insulting or bullying me these days. I couldn't tell you what the last 5 or 10 people in my life that tried to publicly humiliate me even looked like. I never looked at them. What they were saying never made me miss a beat in whatever I was doing. They get so mad every time, try to bait me a few times, and then eventually give up. Meanwhile, everyone around me can hear and see what's happening. There's only one person that everyone is witnessing making a fool out of themselves, and it's not me. The no reaction, is the best reaction. I don't even entertain crap talkers, and if anything, let them have their quote, moment, as it gives a decent perspective as to where their heads are at. I moved into a new neighborhood a few years back, and I have no idea what I did to get on one of my neighbors' bad side. I've moved every 18 months of my life since birth, and lived all over the world, and it wasn't until almost 40 that I came across the most vile and disturbed neighbor I've ever had. Shortly after moving in, got invited to a little get-together, and dude was projecting for almost an hour, straight giggling and laughing his butt off the whole time, trying to get a rise out of me. He had spent some time looking me up online and was boasting about things he had found. I'm a former celebrity overseas, and my life is an open book, and I've had a few stalkers in the past. This guy took the prize for the most obsessed and weird. Weirdest interaction I've ever had when first meeting someone, let alone a new neighbor. Thanks to them, I cleaned up my online presence as I am no longer famous, was a long time ago, and don't bother with people younger than me anymore. We would have neighborhood watch meetings, and the guy or his boyfriend would make some snide remarks about my son's attire. I never gave them the time of day, and everyone could see them festering from their weird obsession with being so negative. I'm a pretty self-aware dude, and know if I'm committing a social faux pas. This dude apparently isn't. Let them keep talking without engaging, and it will speak volumes about them versus whatever it is they're accusing or bullying you for. Freaking weirdos. I'd give you a nasty look, but you've already got one. Oh, sweetie. Did that make you feel good? Oh. Just a dead-eye stare that lasts too long. No words. No one likes to screw with crazy. Sudden and overwhelming physical violence! Am I the genius or am I the jerk? And their affiliated parties do not support, endorse, or condone physical violence. The opinions of Reddit users are their own and do not reflect upon the Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk YouTube channels. Okay, thanks, bye. Well, I never. Good day to you, sir. I said good day! My husband has a bunch of uncles. One uncle is a real piece of crap known for screwing everyone over, but the family still protected him and acted like he was okay. Without going into details, the uncle pulled some dirty, illegal crap when my husband's dad died. Everyone in the family warned us beforehand that he might try to do something. So when he did it, I laid into him, telling him we had been warned he would do it. I told him he was no gentleman, he was a liar and a thief who should be ashamed of himself. He left and went outside and started crying. The thing that hurt him was hearing that his family had warned us. I guess he had no idea how they truly felt about him, and being told he wasn't a gentleman was a deep cut. Where I trained, there was an old joke we used to say. Long-winded, but here you go. A young man goes to the circus on a first date and is sat on the ringside watching the acts when the clowns came in. One clown looked at the young man and steams over to him, getting right in the face. Screw off! Go on, get out! Embarrassed, the man leaves his date and leaves the circus. Full of shame and anger, he decides he's never going to be spoken to and belittled like that again. He studies hard, becomes a litigation lawyer, and becomes world famous in his field. He becomes known as the man who wins every case and can make grown men cry with just a withering look, but he can never forget the shame at his treatment from the clown. Many, many years after his initial visit at the circus, he returns, all prepared to get his own back, and finally, his moment arrives. The clowns walk into the ring. The clown immediately spots him and steams right over, getting in his face again. I told you before, screw off! Go on, get out! The man stands up, the shame from all those years ago rising in him. He draws a deep breath, looks the clown straight in the eye, and stutters, "Frick off, big nose!" I told you it was long-winded, and also not terribly funny. However, it became the stock response in the workshop whenever someone needed putting in their place with an insult, and never failed to make the workshop laugh. Sidebar, I've been having some trouble trying to find some of the longer ones or the ones that are original because there are 5 comments in a row that just say, no you, no you, no you, no you, no you. Like, it's funny the first time, and only the first time. I play hockey, and locker rooms can get fun with all sorts of crap talk flying around. My favorite was actually directed at me. I had a headache and nausea, turns out from a concussion in our previous game, and my teammate looked at me and says, I got a straw in my car. Confused, I say, a straw? And mate replies with, yeah, so you can suck the heck up and play. Hilariously brutal roast, and all in good fun. My wife normally says to her sister, should I build a bridge? When her sister says, why? She says, so you can get over it.
Your mother should have eaten you while your bones were still soft.
Hello, 911? Yes, this one, right here. Being a knob won't make yours bigger. There is no single, quote, best comeback that works against all insults, as different insults require different responses depending on the context and the individual involved. However, a general strategy for responding to insults is to avoid reacting emotionally and instead respond calmly and confidently. This can involve using humor to deflect the insult, questioning the validity of the insult, or simply ignoring the insult altogether. Ultimately, the most effective response will depend on the specific situation and the individual involved, and it's important to remember that not all insults require a response. Thanks, ChatGPT. Look them up and down, the whole body, and simply say with disinterest, you're boring. That will live in their brain rent-free for the next 40 years, guaranteed. For me, racial slurs have never been a trigger. At this point, I've been called all of them due to no one knowing what race I am, and my patience while being insulted either confuses or makes them more angry while I'm just taking verbal abuse. I'm a light brown Thai Asian, but I have the mannerisms and accent, according to my friends of every race, of a white American dude, and my looks do not scream Asian. I think this is evident because my eyes do not have an evident Asian look. As such, I've been confused for Japanese, Chinese, Australian, Burmese, Cuban, Mexican, Brazilian, Iraqi, Afghan, Black, African, Egyptian, French, Scottish, Eskimo. Inuit is correct. Eskimo is a slur. And the most stupid one, Muslim. Yes, a person said I looked like a Muslim, as if it was a race. Of course, the moment I start talking, having a Michigan accent throws off most people angry at me as they either try to comprehend what race I am and what insult to use against me, or most of the time, I bring them back to reality and they're trying to figure out whether it's worth wasting more energy. More, they caught themselves before saying something worse. When someone acted crazy in class, my math teacher would always say something like, a good doctor will help you to get rid of that. Got bullied in high school by a guy in a couple classes. One day, I finally had enough. Bully. Man, you're totally gay. Me. You must be also, since from what I can tell, you're trying to flirt with me every day. Bully's friends start busting up laughing. Me. I guess this is the point where you ask me out. Awkward silence from bully. Him and his group leaves, never to torment me again. I bet you eat corn the long way. Reddit, what's your deep web story? Disclaimer. I'll keep a lot of these stories lighthearted, but do keep in mind that the further you go into the dark web, the more stuff you'll find that will absolutely land you in prison. If you don't know what you're doing, stay off of the dark web. With that being said, please enjoy the video. The majority of these stories will all be the same, because they all come from people who downloaded Tor and went exploring or browsing. The vast majority have found the hidden wiki and clicked on some links. There is a fundamental misunderstanding here of what the dark web is designed to do. Those links from the hidden wiki and other point-and-click entry sites are designed to be found. The most obvious are the darknet markets. They want customers. They put their URLs out there. They list themselves on the wiki and other Tor directories. They don't want the sites to be hidden, just the owners/servers. If you were to go to one of the directories that crawls and links all the live URLs it can find, most of them will be listed as unknown. Some will take you to a site you can look at anyway, but a lot of them will take you to a page where it simply asks for your credentials before you can go any further. There's nothing else. No link to register, no FAQ, no indication of what is behind that password login. The whole idea of Tor's hidden services is that they are hidden from anybody who doesn't have the credentials to get into them. You have to get them in some other way. There's no referral links being spammed on Reddit or the Intel Exchange or general access forums. Some of these sites may be safe havens for dissidents to discuss stuff. Some of them might be the dark, spooky places of the no-sleep stories. But chances are, none of us will ever know what is behind 99% of them. TLDR, the stuff you will find by browsing the dark web is the stuff other people have found. While I personally never received anything from any deep web-affiliated salesfolk, I did live with a roommate who would constantly receive the strangest brochures. At first, we'd receive brochures for cruise lines and the like. I wrote it off as junk mail, but they came so frequently and they started getting stranger. Christian mingle brochures, petting zoo brochures, brochures for any and all services one can think of. I kind of felt like someone was gaslighting me, but I never said anything, and the brochures would disappear as quickly as they came, so I didn't have time to stress it. Until one day I walked in, and my roommate was delicately cutting into a brochure and pulling out a small baggie of powder. The dude had hooked up with the most low-key dealer I'd ever seen. Oh man, the stealth that some deep web dudes come up with is legendary. Low-key stealth? Comic book, still in the plastic ceiling, perfectly legit except the entire back page directly inside the cover was a sheet of acid. Super low-key stealth? A CD in a case, plastic sealed, played great music, looked totally ordinary, until you peeled back the case artwork and noticed that there was some SID tucked away in there. Almost flew under the radar and almost got thrown out stealth? Junk mail. I kid you not. Looked like a straight business-sized envelope, opened it up, official-looking bullcrap similar to what you'd see in regular old junk mail, until you noticed that the envelope had a hidden flap on the inside where there was, guess what, acid. I'm not kidding when I say the guy almost threw out the entire thing until he decided to make sure and tore the thing apart. That's not even talking about how some folks get away with powders, pills, and other type things. Collectible Pez dispensers already filled with pills, but looks like it's never even been opened, complete with the actual candy and original packaging as well. They're creative dudes, I swear. Obviously a throwaway. This is from way back, when Silk Road 1 was still going strong. I was looking for a certain substance, but couldn't find it in my part of the world for a decent price. Posted my request on the forum, and after a few days, someone messages me with an offer. For some reason, I accepted it and sent him around $200. Of course, I got scammed. I didn't think much of it, but posted a warning to others about this guy, saying he scammed me out of $200. A few days later, I get a message in my inbox saying something like this. Hey, I'm a vendor and this guy tried to scam me too. He just ordered an ounce of MDMA from me, and an ounce of sweet sugar crystals are on the way to his mailbox. Please send me your BTC address and I will send you the $200 he scammed you out of. The next day, I had my $200 back and a deep respect for the dark web community. TLDR, guy scams me out of $200, someone else scams him of $700 and refunds me my money. And for the record, yes, he meant literal sugar crystals. It wasn't drug jargon. Back when internet relay chat was on its way out and peer-to-peer was in its infancy, I tried to download The Sims via a private FTP. The guy I downloaded from found a Trojan on my computer and walked me through how to remove it. I would take a bullet for that dude. Silk Road, circa 2013. Purchased what was promised as a, quote, mind-blowing experience. Received a dustbuster 2 days later. Strangely, no complaints on my end. There was a German man selling pretzels. Just pretzels. I feel like this is a great way to add a layer of mystique to your product if you're a pretzel maker. Pretzels so good they can't be sold in stores. Pretzels so good they're listed alongside the experimental drugs. Way back in the day, beyond the terms of a statute of limitations, you used to be able to use Kazaa and LimeWire and stuff to look at people's entire computers, since they were stupid and set the entire computer to share. I used to send out an email a day to random people, pointing out that the pictures of them screwing their husband/wife/girlfriend, etc., and their social security number were freely available, along with instructions on how to uninstall Kazaa/LimeWire. DIY vasectomy kit on Silk Road. It was a kit of weird dentist tool looking hooks and some tube thing. $20. The best thing about Am I the Genius is that you don't have to go to sketchy websites or risk getting arrested to subscribe to the content. Same goes for Am I the Jerk too, linked in the description below. Remember to like the video, subscribe, and thanks for watching! Found someone selling a quote wish pill online. Basically, you take the pill, make a wish, and it's supposed to make it come true. It just made me laugh how much they were trying to sell it off as something real. They made up fake elements that were supposedly found in nature and showed videos of them, quote, making the pill, which was really just a bunch of blue lights being flashed at the screen. They were selling it for $100 a pill. Sad thing is, there were probably a few idiots who actually bought it. Got bored about 4 years ago and wanted to see what I could find. Lots of tables with seemingly useless information, people selling drugs, people screwing animals, and vice versa. Found a few white supremacist sites, and lots of cheese pizza. Honestly, it's not as exciting as a lot of people make it out to be. There are plenty of, quote, hitmen, but I'm guessing 90% of them are cops or a scam. If you are looking to get arrested, there are CP links everywhere. A lot easier to find than I had expected, but I never actually looked at them. Plenty of drugs, some guns. There's plenty of snuff, but you can find snuff on Reddit, so it's not anything special. Overall, I wasn't looking to get arrested, so I didn't do anything besides browse the hidden wiki. Fun story, I used Tor in middle school to get past the websites that were blocked so I could play Congregate. You had to enable Flash for it to work because obviously you needed to play Flash games, but you aren't supposed to enable Flash on Tor because it allows you to be traced. I didn't really care though because I was only using it for Congregate. I miss Congregate. I miss it so bad. I wish Flash games were real again. This was back before Google. Web pages were, for the most part, still very basic HTML with JavaScript. Hardly anyone used CSS. Only discussion boards and some banking sites had anything approaching mature front-end/back-end combinations. Real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. I was browsing random blogs, GeoCity sites, and the like, just going from link to link. Eventually, I came upon an odd page. It appeared to be random thoughts from different people, but for the time, it was very well designed. The messages seemed to be cryptic in nature, like several people trying to pass secret notes. I started through the source, and hidden in the comments of a JavaScript were various IP addresses. I gathered all the IPs in a text file and began enumerating. Some were routers with banner messages I could telnet to, almost all at universities. Quote, warning, this is a secure system at University of blah blah. The default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them, but I didn't poke around. A few of the IPs were web browsers with little to nothing on them, mostly Apache on Linux or some BSD, at least one IIS server I can recall. I finally came upon a web server with a huge directory of HTML files and TIFF images, with a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. NSLOOKUP returned no reverse records for the IP. A visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be records a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both military and medical nature. As I browsed from a subdirectory back to the parent, at the top of was a new HTML file named something like 1-hellothere.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it, and in plain text was the message, quote, we see you. No quotes, all lowercase. About 15 seconds later, the server dropped. Got it at a friend's urging. Was on it for a while until I stumbled onto a site dedicated to random animal facts. It had no design or anything. It was just black text on a white background listing off animal factoids. I was on it for a good 30 minutes before going, the heck am I doing? And uninstalled Tor. I saw someone offering a cure for herpes on Agora. When the drugs arrive and you look in the mail and the only thing going through your head is, holy crap, I can't believe there are drugs in my mailbox that someone shipped me. It's a high in and of itself. One day, I entered one of the deep websites and found a lot of ebooks. The end. I was 19 and wanted to buy a fake ID, but found out that you had to buy Bitcoin and I didn't feel like figuring it out, so I gave up. This was maybe a year or so before Bitcoin blew up. I could be living on the moon right now, but I didn't feel like it. Yeah, about that. I'm gonna have to have you Google crypto crash real quick. I decided to check out one of the successor sites soon after the Silk Road was busted. They had 2 or 3 crappy-looking guns for several $1,000s apiece, some weed, and a metric crapload of weird research drugs. I was hoping to see things I might recognize, like cocaine, or heroin, or LSD, but instead, I got random mixes of letters and numbers in various pills or powders. It was a lot less exciting than I thought it would be. Downloaded Tor, went to the hidden wiki, went to the Silk Road, wasn't interested in drugs. Found a quote, saxaphone, was just a saxophone? Found a template for counterfeiting Gucci products, considered selling Gucci products, found counterfeit medical degrees, considered buying one for 999 Bitcoin, realized that was over $50,000. Found a guy selling carrots. Like, it wasn't code for anything, he was literally just selling carrots for Bitcoin. 10 out of 10 would visit again. I was a part of the no-love deep web alternate reality game where we had to do a deep net scavenger hunt, which culminated in me driving to New York to answer a payphone at 3 a.m. That was cool. I once found a forum dedicated to sharing recordings of the automated messages that tell you the next stop on trains. People would post the recordings that they presumably made themselves, and then they would discuss them. It haunts me to this day. I have so many questions. When I was a freshman in high school, my best friend and I were very into the whole deep web thing. We had Tor and we would exchange onion ports that we had discovered and would explore them together. We saw some weird crap. Right off the bat was a site for a professional hitman, which we decided was definitely run by the FBI. We discovered a series of quote, chans, or deep web 4chan clones. Some of those were very weird, and some of what we saw was definitely illegal. We were fascinated with those in particular because, of course, we were both ridiculous/B users at the time. Lots of disturbing and violent adult images, lots of gore, sometimes the two overlapped. We tended to stay away from that stuff. It was a pretty big buzzkill. Finding the Silk Road was cool, even though we didn't ever buy anything. Probably the weirdest stuff I ever found were the personal ads. There were bulletin boards where people would just ask to do the most deviant, incomprehensible crap to someone, or vice versa. I think about the Craigslist killer when I remember those things, and wonder how many of those people actually end up acting out those fantasies. Okay, bear with me on this one. I was in the midst of a deeply depraved self-pleasure session once when I saw a thumbnail of a chick smack dab in the middle of a giant dude circle. Thinking it was a typical gangbang, I clicked on it, because why not? What did I have to lose? I was experiencing a pretty ridiculously long dry spell at the time, and was pretty dang lonely. I had done the deed to the chick for the Education Connection commercials just a few days earlier, so it wasn't like it would usher me into a new realm of perversion. Anyways, I clicked on the link expecting a gangbang, but what I found was instead much more shocking. It started out as a typical one, chick playing with herself while a bunch of dudes watched on and slowly stroked it. But then, things got weird. None of the dudes banged her. Instead, there was a glass jar that was being passed around that everyone shot into. Everyone. Like 40 dudes shot in this jar. Then it finally made its way to a dude in a chef's uniform. He came out of nowhere, pun probably completely intended, and he added the white sauce to pancake batter and made pancakes. The dude made white sauce cakes. Anyways, the chick eats the white sauce cakes while everyone watches, and the weirdest adult film I've ever seen comes to a strange, uncomfortable end. Needless to say, it was very difficult to pleasure myself to. Found out about it when Silk Road 1 got shut down, so decided to check it out and found Agora. Spent a lot of time setting up an account and decided to finally buy something, so I bought a gram of MDMA, and it all worked perfectly. Then started buying more for myself, and started buying some for friends. The next thing I know, I'm ordering ounces of MDMA at a time and thousands of LSD tabs, and pretty much every drug you can think of, plus a bunch you've never heard of. I was moving all this stuff faster than I could buy it as well, really stupidly might I add. Ended up realizing that this was going to either end by me quitting or me behind bars, so I quit while I was ahead. Ended up with over $10,000 profit and a nice little stash for myself. Bought a trip to Europe and never touched the deep web again. Had about 1,000 empty gel capsules left over, so filled a bunch of them up with glitter and gave them away so people could enjoy having their crap covered in glitter. In computer science, we often got bored and screwed around. One day, we ran into the deep web. The most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. It horrifies me that people way worse than the freaks on Criminal Minds exist. I first learned about the deep web back in grade 10 when this really strange druggy kid in my grade was going on about it. We sat together in English and had a new teacher that wasn't quite good and didn't really know how to control the class, so the last 20 minutes or so, she would just let us do whatever. Everyone around this kid's desk, let's call him Eli, would crowd around his computer and watch him monkey around on Silk Road and other weird sites he found. No CP or anything, but drugs and hitmen and weird crap in general. I was kinda sketched out by it, so I tried to avoid looking at it all, but I listened and it was pretty screwy. Eventually, Eli decided to order drugs from some site. This was high school, so we all lived at home, so he figured he'd order DMT to his cottage, go up for a weekend, and pick it up to hide in his closet. So we typed in his address to some guy, worked out the details, and waited. Went up to his cottage the next weekend, and we all waited for his return for the stories. Eli got back, and we all ran up to him to ask if it worked. He said it didn't, and he was really mad since he had already paid the guy. He complained to whoever was selling him the drugs, and the guy was really understanding and said he'd send an even bigger package to his cottage. Eli went up the next weekend. Still nothing. The guy was very apologetic and said he'd send one more. Still nothing. Eli gave up and figured it was just a guy trying to make a quick buck. He gave up on the deep web, and that was that. Months later, he goes up to his cottage with his family and has a big dinner party with the whole complex of cottages. He's schmoozing around and overhears these elderly people talking about going to the cops. He asks why, and they tell him. They've been consistently getting shipments of drugs every week. Eli had typed in the wrong address, and the guy he was talking to had been sending more and more to the wrong people each week because he felt so bad. He was so sketched out that he quit everything and now is doing quite well for himself. Proud of him. Was on it once, saw the usual drugs and whatnot. Then, I happened to stumble onto a blog with a non-working link that I could not confirm, but apparently, before the link stopped working, it used to be a website where you could buy human organs. Now, that doesn't seem too messed up until the blog was talking about its context. The way they got the organs was by having a team of doctors and assistants go out onto the streets to kidnap homeless people. They would put the homeless people in cages, kill them, then cut them up and sell their organs. They said their justification was that homeless people won't be missed and the police would not come looking for them. I can't confirm the validity of this website, but that is the most messed up thing I somewhat stumbled upon on the dark web. Scary stuff. Throwaway, 'cause illegalness. I was big into Bitcoin when the Silk Road thing happened, and I got into buying certain merchandise online. The first time I was very nervous about the potential of getting caught, so I decided to have the first product sent to my office. I had it addressed generically to the IT department, and my boss, who was a good friend, was going to keep an eye out on it for me. I figured this would give me enough deniability if it was intercepted. Things went very wrong. It came in, and instead of the package going to my boss, it went to his boss. Now, the company I worked for at the time is a very large behemoth with access to credit information on just about everyone in the US. Every employee is drug tested, and we have random tests. This would be a huge issue. So, I was at lunch when the package was delivered and opened. I was actually coming back when I got a call from the project manager. Hey, so, did you have anything sent to the office? No, nothing. Why? Duh, not going to admit to this. Nothing strange sent here? No? Well, boss's boss just received a package, and it contains marijuana. Well, I had enough deniability that while plenty of people suspected me, I got off. I learned something about my boss's boss that day. He didn't tell anyone upstream about it, and rumor has it that he took it home and smoked it. Edit, hostilities people. Look, had I shipped it to my home, the worst case scenario would have unacceptable consequences. Cops can intercept the package, obtain search warrant, find plenty of incriminating evidence in my home, I'm arrested, and lose my job. This is what we call an unacceptable risk. By sending it to the office, I had deniability. I increased the risk of losing $50 worth of weed, which is inconsequential. I also completely eliminated the risk of going to jail and losing my job. Even if the company made us all take a drug test, I can easily pass those. It's called risk mitigation. You identify potential risks and find the path that has the least potential consequences. As far as why weed online, all I could find in my area was Mexican brick swag. I went a nice dro. Professors and teachers of Reddit, what's the most pretentious thing you've heard a student say? Next year, you're still gonna be here BSing, and I'm gonna be making it big in the real world. He got held back. He is not in my class this year. I deserve an A for this course because I was a model student. I've heard some whoppers, but this one came from a student who completed, I think, 2 of the 5 required papers, and both were crap, missed half of the classes, was 15 plus minutes late every time he did show up, never participated in discussions, and didn't turn in a single homework assignment. To this day, the lack of self-awareness boggles my mind. Middle schooler said, I'm only taking Spanish so I can tell my housekeeper what she needs to do. Oh God, it was me. I was the pretentious student. I was going into the 7th grade after transferring out of a private school to a local public school. I met with a couple of my upcoming teachers to take some placement tests since I had been taking a couple of, quote, advanced courses at my Catholic school. I say advanced because, as it turned out, the only real advancing I was doing was seeing how far I could shove my head up my butt. I basically preened the entire interview process whilst dropping some heavy-handed hints about being moved up to high school. I don't remember the specifics of what I said, or most likely I won't let myself, but I definitely implied that the tests were just a waste of time and it would be best to just enroll me in 9th grade. In my Catholic school, I had been in the highest level math course for the school. My public school entrance score put me in remedial pre-algebra. I cried. A lot. 4th grader. I don't need to do good in school. I can go to any college I want. My parents are rich. The thing is, he's not wrong, but can he stay there? Mommy and daddy can pay for your classes, but if you're not passing them, that's on you, bud. Do you know who my father is? His dad was the head of the school board. No craps were given that day. I've also had a kid say, "Didn't you wear that outfit last week?" This was at a very wealthy school. I was half expecting that first kid to start shouting, "Potter!" Post-grad students stayed after on day 1 to tell me, "Just so you know, I'm going to be very bored in your class. But it's not your fault. I just already know everything you're going to talk about." She completed the course with a D-, failed both of her other classes, lost her funding, and now works at Panda Express. From a 20-year-old undergrad, I'm going to be an accountant. I'll never need this database stuff. Well, to be fair, they probably won't. They'll learn all about the superior power of SQL databases and all they can do with them in the modern world. Then they'll join a practice and use the same Excel documents with archaic VB macros that have been used for decades because getting accountants to adopt new technologies is like flogging a dead horse. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like a single computer running Excel somewhere in the world that if it were to crash, it would cause the entire world to just go into flames. Not from a student, but from the student's parent. He doesn't need to do the math, because he's a prophet. Prophets don't do math. Would you make Jesus do math? Jesus was a carpenter. He knew his math. My mom pays your salary, so give me an A. I'm a professor now, but I think my favorite comment came from a classmate of mine during my master's program. We were talking about some mass media theories, and the guy starts talking about framing. His contribution began with a long-winded explanation of the concept, and ended with him saying, "This is my idea, by the way. It's something I've been working on for the last couple of months." The list of citations on the Wikipedia page on framing is about 200 sources long, dating back to the mid-1950s. I'm a 4.0 on the dean's list, so academic misconduct won't be a problem for me. I'm gonna be super wary of all this guy's papers. Like, sure, People cheat out of desperation, but desperation takes two forms: desperate to not fail and desperate to get the A and not the A-. As a high school English teacher, I was counseling a freshman student, about 14 years old, that she should probably do some of her coursework. After all, she wouldn't want to come to her senses as a junior or senior and realize that she was a year or two behind in credits and wouldn't be able to graduate. Her response? "Why should I listen to you? You make about as much as a garbage man." Lots of laughing, giving high fives to friends in class. Plenty of other students to focus on in class. I just moved on to help others in class. Tough to convince a 14-year-old to think ahead. Just checked her transcript. She's about a year and a half behind in credits. It's going to be very difficult for her to graduate this year. Side note, thank you to all the sanitation workers out there. Our comparative wages aren't really the point of this memory. Wow, it would take all of my self-control not to respond, "Yeah, and the trash they deal with doesn't talk back." Professor, I'm subscribed to Am I the Genius. Why didn't you give me an A? Oh, was it because I wasn't subscribed to Am I the Jerk linked in the description below? Thanks, Professor, in this weird analogy. I'll go do that. Not personally, but while I was student teaching in a wealthy area, another teacher told me he heard a student say that their parents got them a crappy car, but it was just until they totaled it. Then, after they destroyed it and learned their lesson, they get a Ferrari. I don't understand how this would teach them a lesson. Crash your car faster so you can get a new one and possibly be injured and or die in the process? Edit, probably an assassination plot. Notre Dame has required theology classes in first year of studies. My professor was a pretty laid-back guy, so one day we're discussing the Tower of Babel. Humans all speak the same language and get tons of stuff done. They decide to build a tower to heaven. God doesn't like that, so he makes humans speak different languages so they can't communicate or build further. The professor asks why God would do something like that, and one student raised his hand and said, "Well, it's not for us to question God." The prof gave him a bemused look and replied, "Yes, it is. We're in a theology class." It was a fun class. I went on a date with a professor at Stanford who had a student raise their hand to ask if he was qualified to teach the course, most likely because he had a southern accent. I doubt they asked him that when he taught at Georgia Tech. I got a 77 for my final grade. Why didn't you bump me up to a B? This was after she didn't turn in the last 3 homeworks and had to have an extension on her final project because she didn't finish. My wife teaches a class where you literally have to show up and that's your grade. She understands athletics, family emergencies, etc. She had a student come in at the end of a semester and whine about the grade he got, a D, I think. The kicker? He flat out told her the reason he missed so much was because he was napping. He was lucky he got the grade he did. Clarification? The class in question is a performance class. You literally show up to practice for the performances, and that's your grade. As a learning management system admin, I hear all kinds of crazy stuff during grade appeals. Last semester, a couple of kids on a sports team were cheating in a class. Each of the 5 would take turns taking the test first online and then in succession, so that while one may not get a great score, the rest usually did. So, the instructor asks how to resolve the issue. We make the 30-question test randomized from 100 question pools. Immediately following the next test, we have a meeting with the dean. Apparently, the students felt it was unfair. Nothing happened to us or them, but the fact that they actually filed a complaint because the test couldn't be cheated on amazed me. Edit, well, there went my inbox. So to answer some questions. Number 1. Blackboard is the #1 LMS provider in the world. Can it be terrible? Yes, if done wrong. Number 2. Random tests are not unfair if the questions are pulled from the information you are covering in class. Number 3. Yes, prevention of showing test results is an option, but does nothing if they are all in the same room just staring at the first student's computer and taking down the questions. This is why we randomized it. Number 4. There are lots of ways to tell if people are cheating. The easiest is how long it takes them to answer questions. Test start and end times also play a role. So in this case, one person would log in, take the test, and then show the results to the others. The rest would all log in at the same time and begin to answer a pretty difficult test very quickly. Number 5. They had no actual justification to complain, and they still filed a complaint. That's the nature of college. People complain about everything. If they can find a loophole, they will exploit it. Probably too late to the party, but I'm a high school art teacher. I was talking about art influences, and a kid said, "I'm not influenced by anyone. The only art I like is my own." Okay, kid. Oh man, I have a story about this. I was in the fine arts program at a state college. Had a classmate, Dawn. She was a quote, perpetual student, meaning she'd been in college for 10 plus years. She was over 30 in classes with 19-year-olds. We were in a figure drawing class together. Dawn was doing some god-awful rendition of the figure model, and the professor steps up and gives her some pointers. We were completing a specific assignment, not just doing whatever, but Dawn was drawing something way out of left field and unrelated to the figure study. Anyway, so the prof steps in and is talking to her very politely about how it's figure drawing time and not glitter glue stick time, and Dawn just looks at her and says, "But that's just not how I do my art." Professor was dumbfounded and I was cracking the heck up. Like, if you're not going to learn different art styles, why are you in an art class? Some context. It's a private Catholic school, but not the safest/best around. I was suggesting to a student to stop wearing their watch because it might be stolen. Quote, "But this is just my everyday Rolex." Student turned in his final paper, and instead of responding to one of the prompts, he wrote his paper on how much he hated the class and how terrible we were as teaching staff. I gave him a B because, while he didn't answer a prompt, he backed his claims up with evidence, which is well above average work compared to his classmates. All the same student. My dad said I don't have the personality to be a nurse. I need to be a doctor. I don't have time to join any student organizations. I'm married. I'm gonna make all A's this semester. Oh, that academic warning? I took care of that. She had a mediocre GPA, hadn't made good grades in science and math classes. Unless her dad built the medical school, she wasn't getting in. And that academic warning was totally legit. I spoke with her professor, and he laughed for quite a while when I told him that she said she would make an A. He said she might pass with a C- if she was lucky. The kicker? Her husband then called our office and threatened to get us all fired for daring to tell his precious wife something she didn't want to hear. Gave us a deadline to apologize to her before we called the president of the university to file his complaint about our behavior. Looked him up on Facebook. One of my teacher's assistants is an excellent Facebook stalker, and he works at a local bike shop. Not even a student at our university. We turned the voicemail over to campus police, and they had a chat with him. Update, May 2017. After 2 changes of major and 3 or 4 changes of pre-health designation, pre-med, pre-dent, pre-PA, whatever else, this student finally graduated. She is going to go to the local community college in the fall and start their respiratory therapy program. If she found her passion, then I'm happy for her. Yes, these are my favorite stories. I love the ones that have happy endings. I once overheard a student in the college-level science major-specific class that I teach say, "I wonder if this teacher will be able to tell me something I don't already know." And apparently I did, because he failed the class with a 32%. Edit. Okay, wow, this blew up overnight, but 2 things. 1, I did not fail him or discriminate against him in any manner because of his arrogance. He just failed. 2, I have an 87% pass rate for my class. I teach a biology class that many only take if they want to major in biology or organic chemistry, so it isn't often that I get students passing through who are unmotivated or are bored by the material. I'm a good professor and certainly try my best to help my students succeed, but sometimes they either can't or won't. I don't really need to learn this kind of basic accounting. I'm definitely going to get a job at Goldman Sachs. To me, his TA. Spoiler, based on his grades, this kid was definitely not getting a job there. I don't deserve an F, you frickin' prick! I know, but it's as low as I can give you. Source, email between my dad and one of his more charming students. Edit, it is worth noting that I never knew who the student was, just that the exchange had taken place. As another commenter mentioned, it was the student who sent an email regarding his/her grade. In regard to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, we're fine. We're the only students who have a chance of passing the AP exam, so you should just focus on us. She was referring to herself and 3 other classmates. She was also loud enough for the entire class to hear. Edit. For everyone asking if she was right, the class I taught had 20 kids. In my opinion, 16 of them had a shot at passing, but only 6 passed, including 3 from her group. One of the kids who wasn't in her group beat all their scores with a 5. So no, I don't think she was right. She also said at the end of the year, "You know, Mr. Chief Lazarus, it's gonna be your fault if I don't get into the college I wanted since you didn't give me an A." Unfortunately, this happens a lot in schools where standardized testing is tied to big funding increases. So-called high kids and bubble kids receive all the attention, ensuring they will pass and teachers' efforts aren't wasted on other students. Maybe this kid was a jerk, or maybe they've been isolated and focused on during their whole academic career and they thought that this was just how the system worked. Edit, for people telling me I'm wrong, my source is my experience as a high school teacher. Our testing facilitator sat me down and told me which kids to work with during testing seasons. It was basically the top 30 to 50% of any given class. Everyone else was ignored because she assumed they wouldn't score high enough to help us hit our numbers. Your school or district may be different. This was mine. When I used to teach first grade, we had our school-wide open house in the second week of school, so we're maybe 7 or 8 days into the year. I had a parent come up to me and ask, "So, how is my daughter doing academically compared to everyone else in here? She'll be going to an Ivy League school, so she needs to be the best student in your class." I told her that we were less than 2 weeks in and that I don't, quote, rank students for first grade. The mom was a thorn in my side for the rest of the year. I'm a student, but our teacher once gave us the whole, if you're not going to be respectful, if you think you already know the material, then just leave. A kid stands up, walks over to the door, realizes that everybody is staring at him, thinks about going to sit back down, but decides on just leaving. The teacher actually let him leave for like 15 minutes before going to get him. This was middle school, so he couldn't leave campus. My first year teaching, I subbed in a grade 10 English class. It was September, and one of the girls in the class was heavily pregnant, so would have gotten pregnant in grade 9. All they had to do in this period was write 1 page about themselves. Easy sub lesson. So I'm walking around checking work, and this girl and her group have done crap all. So I pop over to them and remind them they only have 20 minutes left and need to get something written on their page. Without a pause, the girl looks up at me and says, "Miss, Jesus didn't write his own Bible now, did he?" I just walked away. And Mary didn't screw anyone to get pregnant. Finish your essay. This one's sad, but a high school kid showed me his Patek Philippe watch, told everyone it's $18,000 and worth more than his teacher. His dad gave it to him. Dad, or mom, never came to PTA. Didn't answer calls or respond to his grades or notes home. He stayed with a different family. His parents vacationed without him. Just give me the exam. I already know all you tell me. I've been doing this for 4 years back home. I mean, wood framing and concrete. My trade I teach is steel stud framing, drywall, taping, etc. No concrete or wood framing. Never mind the fact that the apprenticeship itself is 4 years. From a senior who can barely read or write after I told him he needed to check his essay for spelling/grammar errors. Whatever, man. I'm gonna come back here in 5 years and make way more than you. I said, considering that I'm a public school teacher, I certainly hope that he will make more than me. This is from a 16-year-old student arguing about the grade she earned on a research paper. My essay doesn't need any citations because my opinions are fact. I have never in my life been consumed with the urge to backhand a child more than this one right here. I gave a student a C on a philosophy paper, and she says to me, "Do you know who my father is?" To this day, I have no idea, but the grade didn't change. We're gonna end this with a wild one. I have a student that refuses to do anything the way other students do it. He's never been able to make a single, regularly scheduled workshop or presentation 3 years now. Oh, medical school prerequisites? They don't apply to him. He once requested that I come in on a Saturday to meet with him because my regular office hours, quote, didn't work for him. He was my student for 2 years, but now that he's an upperclassman, he is handled by one of my colleagues. I warned her. She didn't believe me. Until he walked into her office this morning to tell her he can't make any of the required workshops he needs to attend, but since he already filled out the paperwork, that's cool, right? He would also like us to find a way for him to graduate early because he just got engaged and wants to use his tuition money for the wedding or something. I don't know. I don't really listen to him anymore. Edit. My throwaway account now has more karma than my real account. I have to get some sleep now so I can go back to the university bright and early to mold young minds or something. I will try to remember this account and update with news of this pretentious jerkwad. But for now, the sweet, sweet release of sleep awaits. Edit 2.
He just came in the office wearing skinny jeans and a fedora.
Edit 3. It's been 2 months and no one will see this, but this jerkwad sent me an email the other day and spelled my name wrong. Don't send me an email asking for a favor, then spell my freaking name wrong. Spell other crap wrong, but check that you spelled the name of the person you are emailing correctly. Edit 4. 5 months since the original post. He had his committee interview. I spoke to the prof who conducted it, and she said he started off really well, but then the mask slipped and it became very obvious that he's a huge jerk. He thinks very highly of himself, even though he isn't really very accomplished. By pre-med standards, he's pretty average. He brags about things he's done like he's the only person that has ever done them. He's still trying to graduate early so he can hurry up and get married, but med schools aren't going to be impressed by that. I'm still trying to get on his subcommittee panel since I didn't interview him. Not to tank it, since I will be one of 20 people, but to see what everyone else thinks. We have far more impressive students who have accomplished a lot more, and I'm really backing their applications. And, since I have the flu, I'm headed back to bed. Edit 5, May 2017. I finally logged back into this account and had a bunch of messages asking for an update. I read the student's committee letter a few weeks ago, and it was nicer than the one I would have written. From what I heard, the subcommittee lowered the author's scores a bit since they thought she was too kind to him. They've all dealt with him at some point and find him very pretentious. It's going to be a few months before I find out his fate, but I think he graduated, I haven't checked, and is probably planning his super pretentious hipster wedding. My colleague next door now refers to him as, quote, my favorite student, whenever she hears from him, in a sarcastic way. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.